Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1172 of the War News Stream. And today we have very big news coming out of Ukraine and Russia. We are hearing that Putin has finally agreed to unconditional ceasefire talks, which will probably not be successful, but they're trying it again anyway. So the U.S. also commits more missiles and military aid to Ukraine from Germany. And also, Pakistan and India have violated their ceasefire agreement within 4 hours of entering into it. And we have big news to cover today, and it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, and technically the past 48 hours inside the Middle East and Ukraine, as we've been able to hear major breaking news from quite literally every single corner of the world over the past 24 hours once again. As we have been able to hear that the Russian Federation has announced in a shocking turn of events that they will now be entering on the 15th of May peace talks with the state of Ukraine, moderated and mediated by the Turks, as they will be attempting to enter a 30-day ceasefire. The ceasefire will be unconditional except for the little conditions that Ukraine has to meet beforehand for the Russians to get into the ceasefire. Pretty much means the same thing as always. But beyond that, however, we have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation's current ceasefire ended today. Many of y'all are going, what ceasefire? I didn't even know that there was an ongoing ceasefire, and the joke's on you, because believe it or not, the Russians actually put out a unilateral ceasefire on their end that ended today. It began on the 8th of May, and it ended on the 10th of May. Many people didn't even know it was going on, because the war in Ukraine certainly didn't know it, because there was continuous bombardments by the Russian Federation, and continuous offensive efforts still being attempted near to the cities of Pokrovsk and CEASEFIRE, which the Ukrainians were, of course, having to repel over that entire 48-hour, well, really 72-hour ceasefire period. We have also been able to hear on additional news that the Russian Federation has closed off the airspace around Kasputin Yar as of yesterday with no TAMs, and we have been able to hear that a major airstrike is still expected, at least at this point, according to our current information, sometime around the 12th of May by the Russian Federation, which may possibly include an Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missile. Meanwhile, the United States and China have currently concluded their first first round of talks in Switzerland over the current trade deal, or largely the tariff war that's been ongoing between the two countries. And it does sound promising, as both sides appear to not really be that big in continuing the major tariffs that have currently started to wreak havoc in major industries, economies, and transportation sectors inside of both countries. We have also been able to hear that the United States of America has gotten involved in conducting a ceasefire with the Republic of India and Pakistan, as they stated that they were able to get alarming intelligence that made them step in immediately and attempt to broker a ceasefire agreement. A ceasefire agreement was successfully achieved by the U.S. Department of State between two parties, and the ceasefire then went into effect. Only 4 hours later, the shortest ceasefire in the 21st century then concluded, as Pakistan started bombardments of the city of Jammu in violation of the ceasefire, as well as continued firefights along the large majority of the line of control in between the Pakistani and Indian-held Jammu and Kashmir regions. We have also been able to hear in the meantime that India has now stated that the ceasefire has been violated, but nevertheless, they were the ones who actually reached out to the United States of America and asked them to broker an initial ceasefire arrangement, so that way they could hopefully see that the alarming escalations that were now happening between the two sides would cease. At this point, we're not really sure if the war is going to begin again or continue to fizzle out, because once again, we have been able to hear from official Indian government statements that they are considering the attacks by Pakistan to be an egregious violation of the ceasefire, and it may appear that they are responding, at least here in the future. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, we have also been able to hear that the United States is now considering military action against the Islamic Republic of Iran seriously, as it appears that there is absolutely no ground to be made. This is also coming at the exact same time as the Yemeni Houthis declared victory over the United States, because the United States reached a ceasefire agreement with the Yemeni Houthis, and at the exact same time, the Yemeni Houthis once again began their bombardments of Israel, as air raids were sounded over the entirety of the city of Tel Aviv, and citizens were having to run from the beaches into shelters to be able to avoid the incoming fire, which was successfully shot down by Israeli air defense. Meanwhile, Israeli aircraft continued air operations over southwestern Syria, near to the Syrian city of Dara, as we have been able to hear that the Druze rebellion against the Jelani government is still continuing at this moment. We have a lot of news to cover today. I'm sure many of y'all could tell that today is not short of news in really any kind of a metric, way, shape, or form. We have insane amounts of it pretty much every single day, and we are going to be trying to make sure to get onto this as much as we can, or at least get y'all as many details as we can up to this point. And that's going to be moving us on tonight, once again, as tradition dictates on this channel, into the Ukraine war, or largely all of the news surrounding the Ukraine war, and then all of the frontline news as well at just a slightly later date. But moving on into Moscow, we were able to hear that a major announcement was going to be made by Vladimir Ilyich Putin here in the next few hours earlier in the day. We were able to hear that the Russian ceasefire did end this morning, the 72-hour ceasefire that began on the 8th of May and ended today on the 10th. Many people are wondering, when did that ever happen? And that's a great question, because we do not know of any given point during that entire 72-hour ceasefire that either side actually attempted to stop any kind of fighting. We will be getting on into, later on in the stream, the continued Russian offensives through the 9th and 10th of May, which were both during the middle of the ceasefire, as well as the continued Russian offensives near to the area of CEASEFIRE, as well as the city of Toretsk. Quite clearly, there was no attempt at a ceasefire in any given way, shape, or form by either side over the course of this incident. Not only that, we were also able to see that Russian offensives against the Ukrainians in near to the area of Sucha were also still continuing during the ceasefire, once again showing us that the initial unilateral 3-day ceasefire that the Russians laid out was broken in every single metric by the Russians, and the Ukrainians, of course, responded in turn, firing back and defending their territory. We then were able to hear that Putin has now proposed talks without preconditions, but with preconditions. Putin has proposed direct talks with Ukraine in Istanbul on May 15th without preconditions, but there's a little bit of a catch to this, and some would say that this is almost some form of a scam or some sort of a fraud that is being attempted by the Russians. The talks beginning inside of Istanbul without preconditions is actually true. To get to Istanbul and to actually talk with the Ukrainians, there is going to be no preconditions to just talk. However, to actually see a ceasefire being implemented in Ukraine, there are still conditions to that, at least at this moment. We were able to hear that the 30-day ceasefire is going to have some nuances, as we were able to hear the Kremlin state that Russia immediately supported the idea of a 30-day ceasefire, but with the need to consider certain nuances. which means that
That
they're
doesn't sound very unconditional to me. That sounds like there's conditions attached to it, but they're trying to minimize the conditions that they already had on it, which honestly, it seems like the same old tactic over again. That's just insane to see that.
it's absolutely it's just batty at this point to see something like this, because once again, this is the same thing they've been saying the whole time that the new administration has been in charge in the United States, is that we are totally up for peace, but with a couple of things being considered in between. This is literally just a scam. Like they are going to be really dragging out the peace process as long as they can, because they don't have any real ambitions of achieving a peace with Ukraine. They want to win, but we have been able to hear that Russia is going to be entering in talks with Ukraine in Ankara, and in a 1 a.m. address, Putin has offered to hold new talks with Ukraine that would start next week. Notably, Putin says that he will seek Turkey to be the mediator and will hold talks with Erdogan tomorrow. Many people are not a big fan of the Republic of Turkey, myself included, but Turkey actually is probably in the position out of everyone else to be the best mediator between the two, because Turkey has shown clear favor towards Ukraine and clear indifference towards Russia throughout the entirety of the conflict. The United States being the intermediator or negotiator to this kind of a peace would be a pretty difficult one, considering that the United States has been openly an avid supporter and leader of the support for the state of Ukraine over the entirety of the conflict, meaning that America's stance as a neutral negotiator has been sullied due to our prior support for Ukraine, which was well within our own interests. But for that reason, that also does not mean that we really would be the best middle ground negotiator in this kind of scenario, or at least the place where the negotiations should be held. The best place to hold negotiations really would be Turkey, in my opinion. I actually feel like that is a pretty decent call, and the Ukrainians will not disagree with that, because the Ukrainians also view the Turks as a decent middle ground negotiator in this sort of a scenario. But in every other scenario, Turkey is just entirely anti-American and anti-Western. There's really no way around that one. It's a country that is a wild card, but at least in this one particular instance, being the wild card they actually are fairly neutral towards either side, and have actually shown a little bit more preference to Ukraine, at least over most of the conflict. Nevertheless, this is going to go nowhere, and that's something that I would like to make quite clear, in my opinion, before we even get to what y'all are thinking on this right now. The Russian Federation is clearly once again going into an attempt to make it look like they're acting in good faith, much like they have been over the entirety of this current administration in the U.S., but there is going to be no good faith attempt at negotiations that will be conducted in Ankara. They have already made it quite clear from the Kremlin spokespeople that they are going to be once again laying out preconditions to a ceasefire inside of Turkey. Those are the nuances. That is the law of the land in Russia, is that there is never going to be a serious attempt at a ceasefire negotiation, at least for now, and all of this is being conducted as a stall tactic. This is a stall tactic that the United States has actually employed before, and y'all are going to be a little bit interested to hear on this. This is the exact same kind of game that we've actually played with China and Taiwan for about 50 years at this point, really ever since the mid-70s. And some people are going to be shocked and like, what? What do you mean by that? So China and Taiwan are a very different situation diplomatically than the state of Ukraine. But funnily enough, we kind of do the same thing with Taiwan and China, because the United States' official position is that we don't recognize Taiwan as an independent country. But the caveat is that we don't recognize them as an independent country, but with some nuance. Quite literally, that's the exact same terminology used there. We recognize the sovereignty of the Republic of China's government over Taiwan, meaning that while we don't recognize them as an independent country, we recognize their government as the sovereign government over the island, technically meaning that they're not really a country, but we also respect that they exist as this independent thing from communist China, which has put them into this weird conundrum for about 50 years, because the communist Chinese will say, okay, so America, you don't recognize them as an independent country. And we'll say, yes, we don't. And so China says, well, then it would be totally fine for us to reunify this belligerent province with communist China, right? And then we go, well, no, because the Republic of China's government is a sovereign government on the island, and therefore we would not recognize an armed attempt on the island to be one that would be considered in the best interest of the sovereignty of the Republic of China's government, and any actions that would be taken in a hostile form against the island will be met with U.S. military retaliation and support. And then China says, so you really recognize Taiwan as a legitimate country? And then we go, oh, no, we don't. They're not a country. We just recognize the sovereignty of their government on the island. That's all. But they're not really a country. So we just keep doing that in a roundabout way. For 50 years, it's actually worked. China has been forced into trying to negotiate with Taiwan to have them integrate into communist China, and it's gone absolutely nowhere by design. That's what Russia's doing in Ukraine. That's what they're doing right now, is that they are continuously running the United States on a diplomatic level through an endless roundabout, because they're going, oh, no, we would like peace and we would like to see the war in Ukraine in. So we go, oh, okay, well, let's get on into the talks. And they're like, yeah, we would love to get into the talks, but with just a little thing to consider here and there. Nothing big, just a small little thing, and the whole thing will be relying on that. So then we'll be like, oh, you're not operating in good faith. No, we are operating entirely in good faith. We are just 100% behind peace. But there's just a couple of small little things that we have to figure out first. And so they keep us in a roundabout circle here, which pretty much is in their favor, because what they're doing is they're making sure that the United States never goes, okay, screw you, Russia, and then gets right back into supporting Ukraine full on with a massive amount of support. So that is what Russia is attempting to do. They're attempting to game the negotiating system to try and make sure that the U.S. doesn't go full into supporting Ukraine right now, and it's further on down the road. That's what they're largely
it sounds
shooting.
like an abusive relationship, like old school gaslighting or something like that on a country's scale.
Man, something that you and me are very familiar with.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, indeed. But nevertheless, we have been able to hear that a lot of people have had an opinion on this here in the channel, and it appears that everyone's opinion is the exact same as mine. And usually I hold off on my opinion before we actually get into the question, well, not the questions, but the polls, to ask you all what y'all are thinking about this. But tonight, I think everyone's on the same page, and the poll is showing that it's a unanimous opinion on that from all of y'all as well. Because Putin has proposed direct talks with Ukraine on May 15th, without preconditions to get into the talk, but with conditions that would have to be met during the talk for a ceasefire to be achieved. And a lot of people are being asked the question, what is that all about? And it appears that everyone's saying that it's Putin simply stalling again, and like I'm explaining, using pretty much gaming the negotiating system to stop the U.S. from fully supporting Ukraine because the talks have fallen apart. So quite literally stalling in the best way that they can. Others are saying, 15% are saying, that Putin will force a Ukrainian surrender somehow through the talks, which really wouldn't be achievable, but some people are saying that. And some are also saying that Putin, and this is the smallest percentage, this is actually a smaller percentage than the unsure crowd, Putin will actually be reasonable. Some people have actually insisted that he may actually be reasonable and meet with the Ukrainians in the middle ground in these kinds of negotiations. Or he might just, do the talks as a formality and then actually enter a unconditional ceasefire without preconditions. Nevertheless, Matthew, what are people thinking about this? It's quite clear what everyone's thinking about this, but what is everyone thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so about 74% of the audience said Putin is simply stalling again, while 15% said Putin will force a Ukrainian surrender and hope the U.S. will back him up, and while 4% said Putin will actually be reasonable. And I must admit, I'm proud to see that only 4% of the people said that he'll be reasonable, because I am almost dead set certain that Putin will not be reasonable. And today they had Peskov running around like a rat in the Kremlin. They had him running around telling the press, oh, you'll want to stick around for this one. This is going to be a big one today. I thought they were about to announce like mass mobilization or something, the way they were hyping it up. And then Putin comes out and says, okay, folks, a revolutionary idea. We're going to enter right back into the stalling talks. And I was like, are you joking? And like, that's what they hyped all this up for, was to enter back into the stalling talks. But that was what he was doing. So I'm going to say 100% Putin is simply stalling again. He's not looking for peace, because even though he said out of his own mouth, he acknowledged for the first time today that this is a war and not an SVO. And also he did say as well that he was not willing to entertain any type of real peace talks with Ukraine, because he has conditions set on top of it. He only wants a full surrender of Ukraine before he actually agrees to any peace talks. So while they're having talks at the table, the talks are basically meaningless for the reasons I've already said. But Enforcer, what say you?
Dude, you said he was scurrying like a rat, and you said that, I don't know if you're meaning to put in a pun, because it's the most rat-like looking person in the whole Kremlin possible. Like, this guy, like, I actually heard, Matthew, that funnily enough, they had to get this guy out of a mousetrap in the Kremlin because he was actually trying to grab the cheese. Like, I heard that as a rumor somewhere.
Man, they have this guy running around like, you can tell this guy like stays scared like all the time. Peskov seems like he's very, very scared of his bosses for a good reason, obviously. But he's got a tough job. Like, he's trying to really walk a tightrope when he comes out to say stuff, and he's just like all over the place. So you can just tell by looking at the guy that he is just a wreck.
Yeah, dude, he is run ragged, dude. You can actually see him over the years, like, getting paler and more ghost-like as the years keep going, dude. It's just getting worse, because this is what he looked like when he first was brought on, dude. Look, he had color in his face, you know, the mustache was looking all right. Now look at him today, dude. Mustache pretty much faded away into obscurity, pale as a ghost. Like, this is, I think, only like a couple of years after he got the position, and he was already looking bad. And also, dude, that's a terrible look right there. What is that? What the hell is he wearing, dude? That's not even a suit.
Looks like he's wearing body armor under there, honestly. Like that jacket is so far like puffed out. I wouldn't be surprised if he was wearing some type of bulletproof vest.
Dude, he looks like he's about to be in The Sopranos and say something like, he never had the makings of a varsity athlete. It looks like he's about to say something like that with like the pose, and that's terrible looking, man. But beyond that, I do have to say that this is, like I was saying right before we actually got into the poll, this is a stall tactic, and this is just entirely in bad faith right here. This is pretty much going to get the U.S. off of Russia's back for a little bit longer, because it will look like they're trying to do talks, and then these will fail, and then we'll be back into the roundabout loop of, oh, they're operating in bad faith, and then Russians go, no, we're really open to talks, we will talk, we want to end the war, and then we'll go, okay, and then they'll go, but it's just that there's a couple of things that we have to figure out beforehand, and then it just ends up going in an endless circle. There is a way to exit this endless loop that we've pretty much gotten into with the Russians at this point, which is to just cut off talks like Zelensky did back in the day, and say that the Russians are not a country that we can negotiate with right now, and we are not going to be negotiating with them until they actually take talks seriously. That's actually the same reason why Ukraine and Zelensky specifically have refused to get into any kind of talks with the Russians over about the past 2 years, is because at the beginning of the war, their terms were as ridiculous as they were right now. And if they were continuously conducting terms like that, they have to make it quite clear on a global stage that the war is going on. Because if they're in an endless round of talks, a lot of countries would go, well, it looks like they might be ending this war quite soon, so there's no reason for us to provide military support to protect our interests, because it looks like the war is going to end and our interests would be protected anyways without providing massive amounts of financial support through arms and equipment. So that's why Ukraine has completely backed out of talks for the past 2 years, is because they had to make it clear to the international world that no, the war is going on for a while, there is really no way to negotiate with them, and we require support because there's really no end in sight. So to protect your interests and ours, we need support because this war is clearly going. So that's also another thing that's currently going on right now that's really hamstringing a lot of things. But the U.S. is just going to have to decide at some point on our national level, which I think we're getting there. There's still going to be a little bit of stalling here, probably for the next few weeks, but we are going to have to get to the point, and I think it's getting here, that they're going to be saying, okay, the Russians are stalling, we're backing out of talks completely, we're going back into supporting Ukraine entirely and keeping the war going until they take it seriously. I think that's really the only approach that we can take at this point, without a doubt, because there is absolutely no other way that the U.S. could react to this at this point. So with that, I hope that does address that, at least the best I can, in my opinion. And moving on from that, though, while we have been talking about the Russian Federation and their roundabout circular attempts at peace, it does appear that there has been a little bit of an interesting thing that's gone on inside of southwestern Ukraine that has something to do with a member of the European Union and also NATO. Shockingly enough, the Ukrainian SBU has uncovered a Hungarian spy ring within the southwestern region of the country. According to the Ukrainian SBU, they uncovered a Hungarian military intelligence network spying in western Ukraine, which is the first case in the nation's history. The agents gathered data on Zakarpattia's military defenses, which is the major city, let's see, Zakarpattia. Where the hell is Zakarpattia? Let's see here. I believe, let me go type it in, because for some reason I'm having a hard time with this one. Here we go. Oh my god, it's the Uzhhorod area. I'm so sorry, everyone. I should have known that one. But beyond that, the Zakarpattia area right here is actually where these spies were apparently conducting intelligence gathering operations. They looked for vulnerabilities and analyzed how locals might react if Hungarian troops entered the region. 2 members of the spy network were detained, and the Ukrainian SBU does believe that there are other spies that are currently operating in the area. Some people will be going, why were Hungarian spies in this area of the Zakarpattia Oblast of southwestern Ukraine, and why in the world are they even considering the retaking of it? Let me bring y'all into a map of Hungary. Let me go get that. So let me bring y'all into this map, because it is a very interesting map, one that a lot of people have never heard of before. This was Hungary at a time. And this is the pre-Trianon Hungary. That's actually the interesting side about it, is that Hungary actually was a far larger country at a time during the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And many people will be like, oh, that's cool, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, I do know about that, and that's true. It was a double monarchy which would share the crown of Hungary, the Kingdom of Hungary, and the Kingdom of Austria. This is the actual borders that Hungary had as a part of Austria-Hungary. Now, what's interesting about that is that after the war ended, there was something that was created called the Treaty of Trianon in 1920, which turned Hungary into the little country that we see today, right here. And it's remained that way since the Treaty of Trianon in 1920. But at a time, they actually did control this land. That's not to say that there's a lot of Hungarian people in that land. Let me go actually show you all the language layout of the people who speak Hungarian. As you can see, there's like absolutely hardly anyone outside of Hungary that speaks Hungarian or is ethnically a Hungarian, except for this little area inside of the Transylvanian region of Romania. And those people have really not had a problem being Romanian because they've been Romanian for about 100 years or more at this point. But for some reason, Orban wants to bring back the Zakarpattia region into Hungary, which is absolutely insane. I just don't really know where that would benefit them at all. But they're actually trying to see that if the war in Ukraine started going badly, could the Hungarian army conduct an offensive into Zakarpattia, take it and annex it into Hungary for them to have for safekeepings well on into the future, which is just an absolutely insane kind of a thing. That's at least what the spy ring was attempting to find out, if it was possible and if they could conduct something like that. So once again, Orban's up to some really weird, funky stuff inside of Hungary at this moment and what their general plans are for the future. Moving on from that, though, and on into some other news, quickly jumping us out of the whole Ukraine war segment and moving us on into the other big ticket news of the night, which I'm sure that many people were here for because it was also in the title. Many would have been able to hear that there was a interesting development that occurred inside of the Republic of India over the past 24 hours. But before we get into that, though, just teasing y'all there with that a little bit because we're about to get into the news segment, but we have another question to ask y'all. The U.S. has approved the transfer of Patriot missiles and artillery to Ukraine. Oh, by the way, let me actually show y'all the article that would prove that here really quickly. The U.S. did approve a large arms shipment of 125 long-range rockets for the Mars 2 and HIMARS systems, so pretty much GMLRSs, and 100 Patriot interceptors from Germany, according to the New York Times. This is a pretty large provision of arms and equipment to the state of Ukraine, at least compared to the trends that we've been seeing over the prior months, and a lot of people have been seeing this quite significantly today and are wondering, is this proof that aid will start to ramp up to the state of Ukraine? And it actually seems that a decent majority of people are actually believing that the aid is going to be ramping up fairly quickly. Other people are saying that it will probably remain the same. A very small amount of people are saying that aid will not be ramping up at all and it's pretty much stopped where it is. And some others are saying that they're unsure and undecided on this at the moment. But Matthew, what are people thinking about it and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So after Ukraine got a nice little shipment of good Patriot missiles and some artillery missiles, we're told, what do you think? Is this proof that aid will be ramping up? So 55% said yes, aid will ramp up very fast now, while 26% said it'll probably remain the same, and only 8% said no, aid will not be ramping up. And I would say this is good proof that it will ramp up. I see some people making the point in the live chat that this aid is being purchased by Ukraine, and that is a good point. However, at the same time, it's much better than nothing because before, the U.S. was taking the position that they might not even sell any more Patriot missiles to Ukraine. And of course, the Patriot is a defensive system. That is an air defense system which shoots down incoming Russian missiles and air targets, which protects civilians. So now that Ukraine is getting 100 of them, that is a very good thing when it comes to protecting the civilian population. And once again, I never agreed with the withholding of Patriots in the first place. I don't think we should be playing with civilians' lives like that over a political issue, but it was done anyway, and now it's been resumed, Patriot shipments to Ukraine. So obviously a very good sign. I think the aid will ramp up pretty fast because that was a big crux, was the Patriot missile shipment. So I'm with the 55%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my opinion, I do believe that the aid to Ukraine is going to be ramping up fairly quickly because I have a feeling, and this is just a really big snowball or really a crystal ball at this point. That's the way we used to put it back in the past. And I haven't even brought up the term crystal balling in a really long time on this channel. But if I was to crystal ball on how the next few weeks are going to go, and to be honest with you folks, with how unpredictable things are and uncertain they are in every single category of the world, crystal balling even a few weeks out is a really tough thing these days because it's not the kind of diplomatic atmosphere that's existed for years. It's changing and it's pretty much unpredictable unpredictable at this point. But if we were to try and add some predictability into it, here's what I think is actually going to be happening here over the next few weeks. The Russians and the Ukrainians are going to enter into talks on the 15th in Ankara. Those talks are most likely going to last several days, and they're most likely going to conclude with nothing being achieved. This will most likely be the sign that the United States needs, because we're already seeing that pretty much the whole U.S. administration is turning against the Russians, slowly yet surely. And I have a feeling that once independent U.S.-Russian talks conclude in Turkey without any real results, the United States of America is going to paint Putin finally as the bad guy, which he's been the whole time, and we'll most likely see that the current administration and the current party in charge, and of course I'm not going to get into domestic politics, but I'm going to explain how it will work, will all of a sudden start to become massive proponents of supporting the Ukrainians and beating up the Russians. That will probably start to become a really big thing, because while this is more so about securing our strategic interests, there's also going to be an interesting spin that will be applied to this, that Putin has now offended the president of the United States, and on the president's honor, we need to support the Ukrainians and beat the Russians just because we're not going to let them get one over on us like that. That's probably the way it's going to be marketed, at least to a decent amount of people, because we do have to remember that there are a large amount of supporters of the current president who believe that Putin is a nice guy. So it will have to be portrayed that Putin has now disrespected their number one guy, so that way they'll have a good justification to support the Ukrainians. With that in mind, the support will most likely start to ramp up, and we'll probably see that the approval of congressional drawdowns will once again start to occur inside of the Congress, which will be approved by the president, and then we'll see that the support to Ukraine is continuing. That is a pretty big crystal ball right there, and that largely would only occur over the course of about 2 months at the longest period. That is a pretty tough one to actually get, though, because there are a million different things that we would have to be able to predict accurately right there to be able to get that conclusion down pat and to know that that's guaranteed what's going to happen. I feel that that is the most logical sort of an assumption that we could make at this point, because it's already starting to naturally move in that direction. I mean, hell, we pretty much were already in that direction yesterday, and now the Russians are throwing another wrench into it, and they're once again trying to start the roundabout circular negotiations and talks with Ukraine that is going nowhere to stall full-on U.S. support to Ukraine again. So that's probably what will be happening here in the near future, at least in my opinion. And once again, take it with a grain of salt, because we don't really know what's going to be happening. And crystal balling is something that is highly unpredictable, and usually a lot of people who crystal ball like that is going to be wrong. So, you know, I'm not even saying that that's exactly what's going to happen or that's guaranteed, but I feel like that would be the most predictable course of action that could be taken at this point. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, someone in the chat, man, I see someone do, yeah, you just got him, man. I was seeing someone was just absolutely going off on that, and I'm like, look, man, it's unpredictable, and they're trying to go off on me for saying what roughly may happen as a small chance, but that would be the most predictable course of action. Nevertheless,
nah, he was going much deeper than that. He said drawing breath is okay while talking shit about Putin. Honestly, that sounds like a stereotypical Russian bot right there.
Man, a typical Russian bot bullet. But nevertheless, we are going to be moving on from this news here for a moment, and moving on down into India and Pakistan, because there has been a lot going on down here again. Although a ceasefire was achieved, it was one of the craziest things, I gotta be honest with y'all. Ceasefires so far have the lowest success rate I've ever seen on the planet. Like, in this period of history, I've seen no ceasefire succeed anywhere at all. We got a ceasefire with the Houthis. The Houthis shot at the Navy right afterwards. Israel got a ceasefire with the Hamas and Hezbollah forces inside of Lebanon and Gaza. They both started firing at Israel right afterwards. Pakistan and India got a ceasefire between each other. They both started firing at each other. Russia imposed a unilateral ceasefire on Ukraine and then started bombing the Ukrainians just hours after they imposed their own ceasefire on their own terms. I've never seen a ceasefire failure rate this high in such a short period of time. I mean, this literally has only been over the course of about the last month. Really just over the last week or two, really in between all of them, if we're not including the Israel, Hamas, and Hezbollah ceasefires. So it's a little bit crazy to see that this many ceasefires are failing all one after another, all in the same period of time. But let me get you all into the ceasefire that failed just recently, because it is actually absolutely hilarious how this has gone down in between Pakistan and India. So as many of y'all may know, and this is something that we were covering in the background, because it didn't really seem to be a big thing until today, The U.S. Department of State, pretty much the Secretary of State, which, just to make sure that y'all know who that is, that's Marco Rubio, had been on the phone with Pakistan and India for days at this point, quite literally since the major action started to happen beyond the border war that was already going on in Jammu and Kashmir. He has been on the phone with both sides for endless days trying to negotiate a de-escalation to the conflict. Finally, that was achieved today, and we actually were able to hear that apparently India was the one who sought the U.S. intervention. From what we're hearing from CNN, they claim that India sought U.S. assistance in de-escalating the conflict following missile strikes from Pakistan. So it appears that the Indians were seeing that this may be going in a very ugly direction, and they requested that the United States gets involved in attempts to negotiate some sort of a ceasefire between the two. We were able to hear that a ceasefire was reached at about 8 o'clock in the morning, as the Indian GMO and the Pakistani GMO spoke via telephone earlier, and both agreed that both countries would stop firing from land, sea, and air from 1700 IST. More talks were to take place on the 12th of May. Then it looked like the whole thing was over. It actually ended, at least at that point, fairly quickly. But right after that, literally just an hour later, Shiraz, who is the Prime Minister of Pakistan, stated, "We have defeated the enemy, we won the war." So instead of actually going into this with the idea of de-escalating this whole deal and just, ending it, he says that it was a war and that they won, which means that they're going into any kind of talks that would happen on the 12th on a hostile footing, because they're already declaring a victory in a war that honestly neither side won. Like, yeah, India did lose 3 aircraft from what we were able to confirm, but Pakistan also took some pretty major hits on some significant air bases and also other targets throughout the country. And we were able to confirm that Pakistani ground forces were killed along with Indian forces as well throughout the entire engagement, really meaning that the results were completely inconclusive, at least when the ceasefire was achieved. Now we are hearing that a little while late. Oh, by the way, let me catch you all up with everything that actually happened right before the ceasefire was achieved. India was still attacking everything that they could inside of Pakistan. We were able to see that there was some sort of an attack on the Peshawar Ring Road, which goes outside of the city of Peshawar, which we can see right here. Once again, keep in mind, while I'm showing these clips, all of these attacks from India happened before the ceasefire was agreed upon. Just want to make that a very important note, because I don't want y'all thinking that these attacks happened after the ceasefire agreement. But we could see the fire right here in Peshawar.
That looks like a pretty big one right there. That might violate the ceasefire, Doug.
Well, this happened before the ceasefire. I was just wanting to make sure
okay.
Yeah, these were the Indian attacks before the ceasefire. We then got to see that India had also apparently attacked Islamabad as well, as we were able to hear that there were some reported explosions over the city of Islamabad, possibly due to drone interceptions. So there was some sort of an attack that was attempted in that area. We also were able to see that an airbase was hit farther south, near to the area of the Bellari Air Base, just southwest of Hyderabad, inside of Pakistan, which we could see in this footage right here. We could see the geolocation of the entrance of the base. We could see fire coming from inside of the facility, and we can see the clip right here as well. Quite clearly, there was some sort of an Indian impact that was a successful hit on the airbase at Kalari, or the Bellari airbase. Was that a wind
looks
turbine?
like Nevada desert out there or something for some reason.
Yeah, it really does, honestly. We can also see another clip right here. That's the end of that clip, but still confirming that there was a hit near to Bellari, just southwest of Hyderabad, in that exact area. Then, after all of these attacks were conducted by India, the ceasefire was reached, and peace was achieved forever. And there was never again a shot fired at any given moment, at any moment in time, period, by either side. Until 4 hours later, and then the Pakistanis attacked Jammu inside of the Jammu and Kashmir region, which we were able to see on film. So this is back and going again. I don't mean to sound excited about that, but it's actually comical and hilarious how that happened. Literally, the ceasefire only lasted for 4 hours. We were largely able to confirm that nobody was shooting at each other for those whole 4 hours. And then, lo and behold, the Pakistanis just started another drone attack 4 hours later. So pretty much breaking the ceasefire as soon as it was created. We hear air defense fire reaching up into the skies over the city of Jammu as they're attempting to shoot down the incoming Pakistani drones. It sounds like snap, crackle, and pop out there. And we also were able to hear more air defense firing just a little bit further north of the city. We also hear what appears to be a possible explosion by a drone and more air defense fire. But that's the end of that
I wonder
clip.
if somebody just didn't get the memo, like the memo about the ceasefire, or did they intentionally violate it with the intention of trying to break the whole thing? I don't know what the case was.
I don't really know, but we were able to hear that there were more strikes that were also occurring in India and Kashmir here in this clip as well, because it appears to be showing more air-launched strikes targeting the Indian-administered Kashmir region. From what we know, this may have been further north of Jammu. It appears that it may have been, so we put the clip north of Jammu. But we can see once again right here, a cameraman looking into the skies. And we can see air defense fire right there.
That is a sick pan flute going on in the background, too.
In perfect time.
I don't think they're doing a good job of using that pan flute to charm these missiles. I think the missiles are still pretty pissed.
The missiles are angry, and the pan flute only works on the Cobras. But nevertheless, we were able to hear that the Indian Army, India's Foreign Secretary says Indian armed forces have been given instructions to deal strongly with violations along the border with Pakistan. That was in response to the attacks that were then occurring in the middle of the night from the Pakistani drone attack. We also were once again able to confirm more sightings of Pakistani drones further up. And we see right there what might be a Pakistani drone or Indian air defense firing. But nevertheless, we were able to get confirmation from all of these clips throughout the entirety of the Jammu and Kashmir region that there sure as hell was no end in sight to this conflict. It appears that Pakistan is now firing. And once again, I want to remind everyone, that was about, at this point, 10 hours ago. We have not heard of an official Indian armed response yet to this attack. But India and Pakistan did agree to a ceasefire, which was broken by Pakistan in a mere 4 hours. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on this development because the idea of a ceasefire being reached this quickly after they were quite literally escalating to nuclear war yesterday was pretty shocking in itself. And then the violation of that ceasefire only 4 hours later is quite literally making this a Korean soap opera from like a Squid Game or something similar. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on this one, and a lot of people are saying that the ceasefire already failed. Some people are saying that they might be able to salvage the whole thing, maybe. Some people, a very small group, are saying that the ceasefire will still work and everyone will just adhere to it. And some others have said that they are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are you thinking about this, and what are people thinking about this as well? Because this whole thing has ended up becoming just an absolute crapshoot at this point, and it seems as though a lot of people have no faith that the ceasefire will continue.
Yeah, so not surprisingly, 59% of the audience, the most popular option, they said the ceasefire has already failed, while 23% said they might salvage it, just maybe, there's a little bit of a chance, and 11% said the ceasefire will still work between India and Pakistan. And I would say, based on the words of India, and once again, that's sort of shaky ground right now between India and Pakistan is their words, because they seem to be lying both like crazy. But they are saying that India is going to respond very forcefully to this breaking in the ceasefire. So if that's anything to work with, then I would assume we are not seeing the end of this war anytime soon. And while the talks are supposed to resume on May the 12th, technically the ceasefire has already been violated, so there's no obligation by the Indian side not to carry out retaliatory attacks for what just occurred from Pakistan's side. So I'm going to say that the odds of salvaging it are probably very low, even with the talks on May the 12th. And there's no guarantee they're even going to show up for those May 12th talks at this point. So they might actually end up canceling them due to the ceasefire being broken by Pakistan. It depends on the details and who ordered this breaking of the ceasefire. So I'm actually with the 59%. I think it's already failed and probably not any hope of salvaging it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with a large majority as well, but considering that I largely agree with Matthew's points, I do want to bring up some devil's advocate things to what Matthew said, to possibly say that it could be an alternative. This attack did happen about 10 hours ago at this point. We haven't seen another Pakistani follow-up attack, and we also haven't seen Indian response to it within 10 hours. So I'm not really sure how to take this. It could just be that the Indians are now prepping up their next strikes on Pakistan, but I also don't think we've really tracked down a lot of official Indian government statements on the attacks that happened in Jammu and Kashmir, rather than a simple statement that the Pakistanis now violated the ceasefire. At least I wasn't able to find any before the show. So I don't really know how this is actually going to go. I don't want to say I'm undecided. I'm generally thinking that the ceasefire talks have completely fallen apart, because it's not really like the olden times back in the day when the Battle of New Orleans could happen in the War of 1812 weeks after the War of 1812 ended in New Orleans. Like, things like that don't really happen often anymore. And so that's why I'm thinking that this would most likely break the ceasefire apart completely, because pretty much the entire Pakistani armed force was probably told that the ceasefire had gone into a place and to stop firing at a specific time. And then they just kept firing anyways. So that's maybe showing that there were some direct orders to continue firing in direct violation of the ceasefire. That's what I'm thinking at this point. So that's why I'm also thinking that this may have completely collapsed the ceasefire, because in the modern world, we have much higher expectations that when a ceasefire is reached, the ceasefire will be adhered to entirely. So I would have to go with the 59% as well. But once again, there are also a couple of things that may be showing that the hostilities have actually ended between India and Pakistan. And so, once again, keep that in mind. While it looks like the ceasefire may have completely fallen apart, we haven't seen any hostile action by either side since that attack about 10 hours ago. So there is still a decent chance that the ceasefire may hold in place. But nevertheless,
it seems like nobody these days wants to adhere to ceasefires anymore. It appears to be the idea of a ceasefire is pretty much dying off in the modern day. Nobody really has the integrity to adhere to them. And I know they've been violated before in the past, but it seems like all the modern ceasefires have been broken by pretty much everybody that's entered into them. While the countries like the USA that negotiate them have, I think, good faith intentions by trying to discuss it, it just never ends up right. There's too much hatred between the two sides fighting in India and Pakistan. Also, the Russians can't be trusted with the Ukrainians. So it's just the ceasefires aren't working out these days. Basically, it's surrender or keep fighting. That seems to be the status quo right now.
It really does seem like everyone's going with this concept of total war, to where you just have to keep pushing till absolute victory. And it's like, with two sides like these, there is no absolute victory ever between them. With Russia and Ukraine, technically, there is an absolute victory where Russia could win because they're a nuclear-armed power, so they could always just threaten to kill everyone if they wanted to. But with these two countries, there's just no way. Like, there's no way, or even a crapshoot, where one could win and actually beat the other, because they could just simply start killing everyone and nuke each other if they wanted to. So that's kind of the issue with these two sides. It's like, they should be more apt to get in a ceasefire than anyone, because the implications of not getting into one and letting this thing escalate to its apex is just far worse than any other kind of conflict in the world right now. I mean, we could let Israel and Iran escalate until Israel kills Khamenei, and nothing would happen right now, because Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, and Israel is nuclear armed. India, on the other hand, and Pakistan can't do that. It's literally, out of any of the conflicts in the world where you truly could just back off and the whole thing would not go nuclear, there's no way for either side to back off and just let the other one go ham, because they still will go nuclear. So a pretty wild thing. And also, man, when you said that the ceasefires aren't working anymore, man, I was thinking of that clip from The Sopranos where they're like, "What's up with all these people? They don't follow the Cosa Nostra," all that stuff about like not ratting and all that, and becoming feds, informants to the feds. It's kind of like that. No one follows ceasefires anymore. It's just an absolutely crazy thing. So
it's kind of like, it's almost like the rules of war don't really matter anymore. Kind of like Russia has proven throughout the Ukraine-Russia war, they don't adhere to the Geneva Conventions at all. And they also don't really adhere to any standard rules of war at all either. And they conduct war atrocities on the regular. And while Ukraine has done them occasionally from time to time, which is natural, that's going to happen in every single conflict that ever occurs in history, the Russians are doing them to the extreme. And also, I would imagine that if we see a ground conflict between India and Pakistan, they're also going to be violating probably pretty much every standard war protocol there is between those two countries, just because of the hatred. So it seems like these days people are just like raring to go when it comes to committing these atrocities and getting into really bloody wars just at a drop of a hat.
yeah, I would have to say it really does seem to be the case. But when you think about it, Matthew, like when you really think about that, I don't really think any country in war ever follows the rules incredibly well. Because if you think about it, the U.S. really didn't follow the rules well in Vietnam. There was a lot of civilian collateral that happened in Vietnam as a result of U.S. involvement there. The Soviets in Afghanistan, I mean, quite literally, they went out of their way to wipe out civilians in Afghanistan during the Soviet-Afghan War. During the Sino-Vietnam War, that was just horrendous. And the Korean War was the same. In the Gulf War, I would say that the Gulf War was like, if there was like a shining, like, white knight in modern warfare, the Gulf War was actually a pretty well-run one. It was very short, only 6 months long, but it was a knight in shining armor because there really wasn't a lot of areas for urban combat to happen where there would be a lot of civilian collateral. So there's that in mind. So that was a very clean war, at least by all metrics. But most wars are a pretty nasty thing, and while a lot of people try and follow the rules of war in the Geneva Convention, I think that that is still a far cry from the actual reality of what will happen. But still, you know, it's nice to know that the Geneva Convention exists because back in the day in war was brutal. I mean, if you were a civilian, you were going to get looted, killed, and worse if an army came through and you were in an enemy country from that army. Nowadays, there's a little bit more reservation on that, but still, war is an absolutely brutal kind of a thing. And it really is starting to show these days because not even the official governments of these countries really want to follow the ceasefire as well. So, you know, like, I guess that is what it is. But still an absolutely brutal thing to think of as the reality of the situation. Nevertheless, I hope we were able to cover the Pakistan-India follow-up well at this point, and now we're just waiting to see whether the ceasefire holds or whether it breaks apart like a lot of people are largely expecting at this point. And so with that, we are going to be moving on out of that news and on into our intermediary news before we get back into Ukraine, which is going to include the U.S.-China tariff talks, the German support to Ukraine, or at least the update on what they're going to be doing about announcing that support, as well as everything going on in the Middle East as well that we weren't able to cover yesterday, and then we're going to get right back into Ukraine and cover all of the remaining news there. But before we get into all of that, I do want to make sure that we address a couple of questions, because we have had a load of questions tonight, and a load of people chit-chatting in the chat tonight, which we love to see, and I also got to thank all of y'all for being here so far tonight. We got to a peak viewership of 10,000 viewers live, and so far in the first hour, we've had 41,000 people here, and we are, of course, entirely honored and appreciative of having so many people watching this stream and, of course, supporting it as well. It's an amazing thing to know that so many people enjoy this show and really count on it to be their primary source of news every single night, and we are always massively appreciative of that. You can count your lucky stars and bet your boots that we are. And so we want to make sure to chit-chat with you all for just a second to give ourselves a break and also give y'all a break to get ready to get into the remainder of all of the different news categories that we have tonight. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of the night. This one goes to Pagetto, who puts in a $60 donation, and very generous support, by the way. And thank you very much for that support. And I am pretty sure that's the first time you've ever thrown in support to the channel, and we really sincerely do appreciate that. And thank you for helping to keep the channel running as well. And I don't see any comment attached to the super chat. I think it's just the donation, and it is. But thank you very much once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you massively for your incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, Pagetto, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support is massively appreciative, and we are incredibly grateful for so many people who enjoy the channel and go out of their way, even when they don't have to support this channel and help it to keep on rolling. They all make it possible for us to do this day in and day out as our job, and to be able to make sure that we are able to cover the news of what's going on around the world to all of y'all as best as we possibly can. A massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, by the way, I gotta say, folks, that tonight I've been seeing a massive outpouring of kind words and support to the channel the entire night, which is a absolutely amazing thing, because we love to know that so many people do enjoy the show. I saw a lot of people saying amazing things about our intro, a lot of people saying amazing things about our coverage tonight. It's kind of nice to not have a flood of Pakistan and Indian bots for a change, at least for this night, because we actually get to see all of the kind words and good comments that people have for the show, rather than just a whole bunch of negativity trying to say that the whole channel is a lie. So it's great to see that. We love to see that. And I got to thank all of y'all so much for the kind words, because I just saw someone else say, really quickly, I want to make sure to, let's see here, where in the world did it go? Oh, here we go. Perspicious M said, I find the show is interesting, well presented. And we've been seeing a load of kind words like that tonight, and I got to thank you all for that, because it really does mean a lot. Believe it or not, folks, we actually don't hear a lot of kind comments and kind words from many people behind the scenes. And that's not to say that fans and friends don't have kind words. Of course they do, but sometimes we don't hear kind words from some of the people you would think would have the most kind words to say. That's kind of usually missing. And so it really means a lot to us when folks out there in the world at large have a lot of good things and kind things to say about our show, because it means a great deal to us, because beyond that, we really don't hear a lot of kind things. We usually hear a lot of nasty things behind the scenes, but it's always great to know that we were able to get on the show and have a lot of people really take pride in the kind of pride that we also take in getting this news out to all of y'all. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Pagetto, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be on here each and every night and give this thing our damnedest to make sure that we were able to get the news out to each and every single one of y'all. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so jumping into our second support of the night, this one goes to K-Dub Janky, a longtime channel legend as well. And thank you very much, K-Dub, for that $50 support and also helping keep the channel running once again. And K-Dub said, so India ago was ruled by Khan's descendant from Genghis. Later, the British controlled it, which include Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and parts of Burma. Why was there no violence when the British controlled the area?
That's an interesting question. The violence, there was a decent amount of violence. Like, I'll have to say that, but it was more so sanctioned by the East India Company, because interestingly enough, India wasn't really run by the British government, by the crown directly, until way later on. And we're talking like the 1890s for the large part is when the East India Company came to an end, and the corporation was absorbed as a crown dependency and became the British Raj, which is what it would be called until India gained its independence, and then that whole thing happened from there. The thing that's interesting, though, is that during the time that Britain was in control of India, it was a weird thing. If we want to call British control the East India Company, it was quite bizarre. Some people may not know this, but if you think that working for Amazon in the modern day under Lord Bezos is a tough job, then you should have been an Indian or a Pakistani living under the East India Company in the 18th and 19th centuries, because it was brutal. The whole country was run as a company. And that's something that's quite interesting, actually, to many people, is that a lot of British colonial adventures, or I guess you could say endeavors, were not colonies. They were actually corporations. The East India Company was a corporation by all modern definition. So a company was running an entire country. The East India Company had its own army, it had its own navy, it had its own commanders, it had its own government through the corporation. It was an absolutely kind of a bizarre thing to think about, and crazily enough, even to this day, the East India Company, by the standards of the time, has never been beat by a modern company for the amount of accumulated value that they had as a corporation. No other corporation has existed that was as wealthy or powerful as the East India Company. So that is kind of the interesting thing surrounding that time, because there was also something, and I'll pull this up. Well, I won't pull it up because I think it might be too graphic for YouTube, but at the time, the East India Company, especially after I believe it was the Mysore Rebellion of 1850, which came about because of a certain thing. Actually, I think it was another rebellion. But at the time, there was a huge religious thing in Pakistan and India that you couldn't use anything related to that of a pig. Pretty much the same kind of Islamic rules that exist in the modern world today. The British introduced the East India Company technically introduced a special kind of cartridge for a new muzzle-loading rifle, for the large part, that required that the cartridge use a pigskin sort of I guess you could say, covering, or more so a casing. This was massively offensive to all of the mercenaries, or largely the army of the East India Company, and they openly revolted, which began a pretty significant and bloody revolt. But after the revolt ended, the East India Company took on a kind of punishment that had existed in the region beforehand, in the Maratha Empire and others, but they took on a kind of punishment that is... Thank you, Ben Urisman. It was the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857 that I'm talking about right here, because this is when that kind of punishment started, and it was brutal, and the East India Company would use it well until they were absorbed into the British Raj. But it was called blowing from a gun. And blowing from a gun is an absolutely bizarre kind of a thing. So y'all know when Kim Jong-un's uncle was killed by anti-aircraft fire in the middle of like a city square at some point. So kind of the same thing, but let me go pull up a non-graphic picture of this. Let's see.
A non-graphic picture of Kim Jong-un's uncle meeting his demise in the square.
Not that. It's actually the British, the East India Company thing that they were doing. They actually have a museum exhibit of it somewhere. But this ought to be close enough. Here is an actual picture of one of these punishments being carried out before they actually carried out the punishment. So what they would do is that they would take people specifically charged with the crime of treason, and they would take them and then they would mount them, arms bound behind their back, four ahead of the cannon. They would mount the cannon's barrel to where it would sit in the small of their back. And once the order to execute was issued, the artillerist would step a little ways back because of the debris soon to follow, and they would detonate the cannon. The cannons at the time were not fuse lit like a lot of people would believe cannons are of this time period. They actually were detonated by the same kind of rip cords that we have nowadays. So you'd yank the cord, it would hit a percussion cap, and then that would set off the cannon. What would happen as a result of that is that the entire torso of the person, the condemned, would be disintegrated. It would cease to exist. The arms, the head, and the legs would go flying everywhere. And what this punishment was, it's a very sick punishment, but this actually has existed in India before the East India Company even controlled the entire country. It was used by prior Indian empires as a form of punishment, not only that would exist in life, but also in death. Because according to Indian religious customs, this execution would ensure that there was never a proper burial of the body, meaning that, according to their religion, you were never able to pass on into the next life, and you would live in hell and torment even beyond life. So it was pretty much a form of psychological execution to make sure that people would try their best not to conduct treason or conduct open rebellions, because the British would ensure, much like the Maratha Empire and the Mughal empires beforehand, that you would not even be able to find peace in death if you were to conduct an open rebellion. Thousands of these kinds of executions were conducted by the British, although I do have to say that this was also conducted by the Maratha Empire and the Mughal Empire before the British really were heavily involved in the area, not to as great an extent as the British would do it, but they still did it, and that's where the British got the idea from. But they said, what if we did that on an industrial scale for anyone who conducted an act of treason or attempted an uprising? And so this would exist throughout the remainder of the history of the East India Company until this became the British Raj, and then the British Raj would outlaw the practice in 1908, although it was very seldomly used during the time of the Raj. But still, an absolutely kind of bizarre sort of thing. So saying that violence didn't exist, there was state-sanctioned violence for sure, and there was a decent amount of it during the time of the East India Company. But as far as open rebellion, the thing is that the East India Company didn't want violence, because the East India Company operated as a corporation, and that corporation was there to make money, and to make money for their shareholders, kind of like a modern corporation, literally just like a corporation. So they had an inherent invested interest in cutting down on whatever instability they could as possible, because instability is bad for business. So that's why you would generally see that during the time of the East India Company, open violence was very rare, and usually it would only exist in limited rebellions, although the Sepoy Mutiny was the largest of its kind to exist before and after. But that is not to say that there was a complete absence of any kind of violence, state-sanctioned or non-state sanctioned, that happened during the time of the East India Company. But I hope that does address it the best I can, and I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and make this thing possible, and also talk about a really interesting part of history that people don't know about. Also, by the way, another thing is that I forgot to throw this in. Blowing from a gun as a form of execution was such a... Well, actually, as far as the actual execution itself to the accused, it generally is, I don't want to say it's humane because it's barbaric, but the death was instant, so there was no suffering involved. Death was quite literally instantaneous from that sort of punishment. But it was considered to be absolutely appalling to everyone around the area, including the people actually conducting the execution in the East India Company. It was heavily written about by British explorers who would go to India, what these kinds of punishments were. They said that the smell around the execution sites was rancid because, the body is atomized and there's no way to clean that up. And also they said that dogs would hang out, stray dogs would hang out around the execution sites whenever an execution was about to happen. And as soon as that guy was blown apart, the dogs would immediately come in and start eating anything that they could find, which made a lot of people even more sick on top. I mean, like it was a very barbaric thing. But that is something that a lot of people really don't know about. And that is also something that India nowadays uses to talk to a great extent about the kind of atrocities that were committed under the East India Company, because I don't think anyone could disagree that is probably one of the most cruel and unusual forms of punishment that could be imagined. Honestly, it's insane to think that the Mughal and Maratha empires used it before the East India Company, and it's also absolutely insane that anyone in the East India Company took that punishment and then put it into an industrial scale for the large part. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment. But a huge thanks to you once again, KW. Thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that the best I could. And also, sorry, Lisa, I didn't mean to share that whole story while you're eating a snack. But still, very interesting. Well, a very interesting thing, not in a great way, but a very interesting thing in a morbid way about the East India Company and their operations inside of India. But nevertheless, we are on to the final question of the segment. And then we're going to be moving on into the remainder of the news.
All right, so the final one of the segment goes to another channel legend. This time it is the Snow White, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Snow White, for the 50 and also helping to keep the channel running. And they said, can you pick a live chat question tonight for me?
And of course we can pick a live chat question for you. What kind of a question is that, Snow White? I'm just playing with you. We, of course, are going to make sure to get a live chat question in your honor, Snow White. And I got to thank you for being an old guard and a channel legend, because folks like you helped this channel to be possible day in and day out and keep this thing running, and we're massively appreciative. And thank you so much for being here again tonight and enjoying it so greatly that you would support it and help this channel to keep on running, and also help us to make sure to get a live chat question in your honor. And so what is the live chat question that we have, Matthew, in honor of Snow White?
All right, so that question is going to be from Al from the live chat. And Al says, my question is, what is Putler's involvement in igniting the India-Pakistan conflict, if at all?
There really is no involvement. A lot of these escalations and conflicts that are going on in the world are largely operating in their own microcosms. There isn't really a larger motivating factor out there. Matthew has what we call the prison yard theory, which is where the war in Ukraine started, which is pretty much like a brawl in the prison yard. So now there's a whole bunch of separate brawls that were already brewing in the background, but now everyone's going, well, hell, the prison yard's going to hell. Let's all just start beating the hell out of each other since, it's already going down. So that's Matthew's theory. But my theory is that it's largely all going down because for some reason all of them are just reaching their apex at the same time. Because there were times in history much like this. Like, for example, in 1971, India and Pakistan would go into a major conflict for some weeks at that time, and I believe at the exact same time, Israel was once again embroiled in another Israeli-Arab war for the large part during that exact same year. Then, also at the same time, the Soviet Union, I believe, was conducting pressure on the United States in Vietnam, as there was a war going in Vietnam during that time, and I also believe that simultaneously within all of that, I'm trying to think of where there were other conflicts. I think there were conflicts going on in the Congo still, as well as in Rhodesia. And there also was, I think, something going on, some sort of an uprising in South America and Central America. So there were a lot of wars during the 70s that were happening pretty much all at the exact same time. So I would have to say that the reason why I think a lot of these conflicts are breaking out all at the same time is because they're all just reaching ahead again at the perfect moment, because India and Pakistan hate each other. There's no external influence needed for that one. They just hate each other extremely. Israel and Iran have unresolved issues. Really, the issue is that Israel still exists and Iran has a problem with that, and Iran still exists and Israel also has a problem with that as well. Then with Ukraine and Russia, that's largely Russia trying to reinvigorate their former glory as the Soviet Union or the Russian Empire. With China and Taiwan, that situation's literally been unresolved since the end of the Civil War. And so all of them really have their own kind of like storyline to them where they're completely separate to each other. And so I'd have to say that Putin's involvement in getting this whole thing started in India and Pakistan is probably non-existent. It's probably entirely just orchestrated between the two themselves and really didn't require any external involvement to really kick this thing off. That would be my opinion on it. But Matthew, what are you thinking?
And remind me, what was the question again?
What would Putin or Russia's involvement be in kicking off any of the tensions between Pakistan and India if they had any at all?
Honestly, I would probably say none because India has always been sort of on the fence about Russia a little bit. But at the same time, though, India appears to have veered away from Russia to a pretty large extent. And now they're leaning heavily on the West because they need our economic benefits to try to grow their country as fast as possible. And India is actually doing a pretty decent job of growing their country economically. But by getting into a war like this, they're not going to grow that fast because if this gets prolonged, that's going to harm that quite a bit. But generally, though, Putin being involved, while I would like to pin him as the boogeyman in this situation, I don't think he would be the boogeyman. He's generally in his own little sphere. He's too occupied with Ukraine to really be too occupied elsewhere, and he really has no way to spark it between those two countries. There's really not much he could do. So that's what I would think.
That's what I would think as well. I think it's largely just a microcosm, once again, like really every other conflict going on in the world. So while it looks like the whole world's at war, the reality is that it's really just a whole bunch of other wars going on all at the same time as each other, which gives the illusion of a world war, but it really isn't a world war in the sense we would think of it. Also, I saw someone say, let's see here. Someone actually had something interesting. Oh, Old Warrior said, remember Algeria and France, Algeria versus France was going on then. Oh, yeah, you are right about that. And I also think there was a whole incident that the U.S. was having with Libya at the same time, too. So there was a load, going on back then. So, yeah, no lack of action back in the 70s at all. The 70s was a wild time for global affairs. It was a very unstable time. And that's why a lot of people were scared back then, because they were scared that at any moment nuclear war could break out. And speaking of nuclear war, a lot of people have been talking about the alarming intel that the U.S. had received, which caused them to get involved with the India-Pakistan negotiations. And a lot of people are wondering, what was that alarming information that the U.S. got that made them start burning down the phones between India and Pakistan? And a lot of people are saying that it was the fact that Pakistan was most likely going to use nukes. Others are saying that it was India-Pakistan ground mobilizations, and some others are saying that it appeared that China might be getting involved, and that's what got the U.S. burning down the phone lines. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So we were not told by the U.S. officials what the alarming intel was that they received to cause them to start burning down those phone lines to the Indian and Pakistani governments. But apparently it was very alarming because they really did burn the phone lines down and got a very quick ceasefire, which was not held up very long. So 44% said Pakistan was going to use nukes, and that was the intel, while 22% said the India-Pakistan ground mobilization was about to occur, and 22% said China was probably going to get involved. And I would say, generally speaking, I think the alarming intel is actually not that secret after all. I think it's actually right out in the public, and we've seen it last night. I think the Pakistani government assembling that nuclear body, the top body of their government, which is solely responsible for deploying nuclear weapons, I think that was the alarming intel. And once again, the U.S. officials did not confirm that, but I would assume, because that actually alarmed me quite badly last night when I saw that, that was a bad sign, that probably alarmed the U.S. officials equally badly, and that's why they started burning phone lines down. So I'm with the 44%. I think Pakistan assembling that nuclear body really alarmed the United States and got them to take more note of the situation between the two countries. So I'm with the 44%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to be with the 44% as well. I think that certainly was the case. I'd have to completely agree with Matthew on that. Really not a lot to add there. And also, by the way, while Matthew was speaking there for a moment about what probably got the U.S. to be heavily involved, I actually did find a list of all of the active conflicts going on in 1971. And boys, the list actually is one hell of a list. There was the Bangladesh Liberation War, the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971, the Rhodesian Bush War, also labor disputes and strikes. I don't know if those got violent. That wasn't violent. Yeah, so apparently none of them appear to be that violent, at least here in the West. And so, let's see here. What else happened? Oh, yeah, the Vietnam War was going on. There was a coup d'etat in Uganda. There was also a coup d'etat in Thailand. There was also a Turkish military memorandum issued because there was a coup in Turkey during that year. There was also there was a major battle in Vietnam in the middle of the Vietnam War. There was also a massacre inside of Vietnam as well. Let's see here. There was the Indo-Pakistan War of 1971. There was Operation Lam Son, which is in the Vietnam War as well. Let's see here. Operation Desert. Let's see. So that was a Laotian. That was inside of the Laotian Civil War for the large part, or the Laotian insurgency. There was an insurgency in Malaysia. A lot of things going on in 1971 for the large part. So kind of once again laying out, it's not a wildly unprecedented year this year. And also, let me check conflicts in 1973. Let me go check that really quickly. Oh yeah, so there's a lot here as well. But you can kind of see there was a lot going on every year. There's a load of them going on. So, once again, it's kind of a normal year. Kind of a little sad to think that this is kind of a normal year in history, because I'm sure, let me go look at conflicts. Let's see, I spelled that so wrong. Conflicts in 2023. Let's go look at the list that they would have on Wikipedia for that. Holy moly. Oh, well, that's mostly just Russian, Ukraine stuff for the large part. Let's see. I'm not going to lie, man. I tried to excuse that really quickly. There's actually a lot going on recently, even more so than the 70s. Like, this honestly is disproving my point, because there's a million things that are going on right now.
Man, I've been trying to tell you, man. I said it's been getting crazy as of the recent years. Honestly, I think why that is, this is my theory on the whole thing, which it's just my opinion. It's not necessarily based in total fact, but my observations are that once World War II ended, generally people got very wary of war because they saw the horrors of it in World War II, and the entire world went to war, and everybody settled down for a little bit. They said, okay, let's chill out because we don't want to repeat that horror for the entire world to experience again this quick. So they chilled out. We had a bit of a chill out period, and now we've gone berserk because people have forgotten the horrors of war, and all these countries that hate one another are figuring, let's just go kill each other now and see how it goes. And they're going to find out really quick, like Ukraine and Russia have, that's not a good thing. Like, that's a really terrible thing. It's suffering. It's hell on earth. And a war is not something to pursue under any circumstance if you can avoid it at all costs. But unfortunately, when you have madmen like Putin, he forces you into situations where you have to fight. So Ukraine's doing what they got to do. These other countries fighting, like Israel, they're doing what they have to do as well. It's just an unfortunate situation.
Man, what's crazy, man? I just typed in 2005 to see what it looked like just, 20 years ago. What's kind of crazy, dude, I totally forgot that there was like a whole bunch of Maoists that ended up almost literally, well, actually they did send Nepal into a civil war. And I remember the funny thing is that they actually were like using Martini Henrys in that civil war. And then after the civil war was over, they were like, oh my God, guys, we found all these Martini Henrys. Where did they come from? And it's like, well, they came from the Civil War, man. It's like they were using them. But there's been a load of Martini Henrys that have been getting imported to the U.S. recently from overseas because they're so old, they're technically not considered firearms. From Nepal because the Civil War ended. And in the middle of the Civil War, for some reason, everyone was just pulling Martini Henrys out of their ass. Like, no one even knows really where they were or where they came from. But there was just an endless number of them, which is kind of an interesting thing about that whole Civil War. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, but it is time for us to move on into the remainder of our news, because boy howdy folks, do we have a lot of it. But if you have thrown in a super chat, do not worry folks. If you're new to the channel, we address every single super chat before the stream is over, and you do not have to pay to play here on the stream. You do not have to put in a super chat to have a question answered. Questions are answered for free. Live chat questions are grabbed from time to time, either due to a request by a super chatter, and we also grab as many of them as we can at the end of each stream. But moving on from that and into the Middle East, we were able to hear that the Yemeni Houthis declared victory over America, and we were able to see the little rally that they had inside of Sana'a, and that's a big one. It actually appears that there's a lot of people in support of them.
Yeah, it's weird. Every time they say, "Oh, there's not too many people to support them," it's just the terrorists that generally support themselves, and then you see crowds like this, and you're like, someone's lying here, and I wonder who that is.
Population of Sana'a. Let me see here. So about 3.5 million people live in the city, which is actually kind of crazy, man, because that means it's as big as LA, technically, by size. But that looks to be, I would say, hundreds of thousands of people out here. So it looks like a decent amount of the city is in public support of the Houthis. So a little bit interesting with that, but they still declared victory on us.
Also, don't the Houthis actually hold like seats in the government? Because I found out the other day how deep Hezbollah has seats in the Lebanese government, which was I knew they were involved with the government. I didn't know they actually had like the equivalent of a caucus in the Lebanese government, like a Hezbollah like terrorist caucus, literally a formal version of the organization in the government. So do they have the same thing in Yemen with the Houthis? Like they have seats in the government?
They don't, actually, because technically the Yemeni government, the official Yemeni government, is still involved in the civil war with the Houthis. So, no, they do not hold a position. In fact, they are an enemy force to the Yemeni government at the moment. And also everything in orange and yellow is affiliated or aligned with the Yemeni government as well. So, pretty much everyone here, except for the people in yellow, are fighting, well, except for the people in green, are fighting the people in green, which are the Houthis. So they don't have an official position in the government. But that's something interesting for y'all to know. Let's see, the Lebanese government. Because, they always say that Hezbollah isn't Lebanon, but Hezbollah is Lebanon. Because if you look at their political bodies, inside the country. You can actually see right here, this is the parliament from the 2022 Lebanese general election. And if you look right here, let me go see, where in the hell is it, man?
Loyalty
Oh,
to the
yeah.
resistance bloc.
Hezbollah and the Independents, which are also a part of the loyalty to the resistance bloc. So they make up quite a significant part of the seats, because this is the caretaker government, which has 60 seats. Well, sorry, actually, correction there. They actually have a total, let me go see how many seats they have. Oh, gee willikers, folks! I can't find the official number of seats. I'll be damned. But beyond that, they are officially in the government with seats. So you know, it's not really something where you can go, oh, well, they're not really a part of the government or anything. Yeah, they are actually. They actually have official representation, legal representation in the Lebanese government, and they also pretty much run the country too. So Lebanon is Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is Lebanon. They're pretty much inseparable because they actually have official government representation. And man, I bet you a lot of people are looking at this and they're like, what the hell is this? What kind of a political party structure do they have in Lebanon? It's called the one that doesn't work and the one that's run by the terrorists. So
yeah, this is why I think Lebanon's having the worst economic crisis in their history right now, or something to that effect, is because you have a map that looks like that.
yeah, I don't even think there's a way to create a coalition in there, man, because it's
Nope.
like there's literally like 20 parties. There's no way to actually create a coalition amongst all of them.
It's
So
impossible.
man, I'm telling it is absolutely impossible. It's also like, what happened to the seats that look like they're unfilled? Oh, Hezbollah just shot them. It's like, it's probably, that's the answer. It's like, they probably just shot these. They're independents, by the way. I'm just kidding around about that. They obviously didn't shoot them. They filled them with yes men. But anyways, moving on from that and on out of how these countries are kind of run by Iran for the large part, while the Houthis were declaring victory, they also launched another attack on Tel Aviv, and we were able to see citizens having to run from the beaches into the shelters because incoming Houthi missiles were inbound and Israeli air defense was attempting to shoot them down.
Oh wow, with Stampede. That looks like California's beaches.
Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? It looks like LA kind of area. But that's the end of the clip, and once again showing us that the Israelis were once again under the attack from the country that was stated to have capitulated. Meanwhile, we also got to hear that Israeli aircraft were active over the city of Dara inside of southwestern Syria, and moving on from that and into the area of Muscat inside of Oman, we were able to hear that the United States has stated that they're going to be going into one more round of talks with Iran on Sunday, and if they are not productive, they will not continue, and we will have to take a different path. That different path is military option, as the United States of America has stated that they will be considering putting the military option back on the table if significant progress is not made in Sunday's round of nuclear talks with Iran, according to I-24 News, citing sources close to the U.S. envoy Witkoff. So it does appear that the United States is possibly considering armed action against Iran here within the very near future. Meanwhile, moving on out of that, it's now time for us to get on into Ukraine and all the news going on around there. Before we do, though, we have been able to hear that negotiations with the United States and China have been underway inside of Switzerland over the situation of trade and tariffs. And we've also been able to hear from the U.S. government officially that alarming U.S. intelligence led to their involvement in trying to negotiate a settlement to India and Pakistan. Forgot to include that earlier. Want to make sure to cover that now. Moving on into the actual Ukraine-related news, however, we were able to hear that arms shipments from Germany are now going to be classified. And Berlin will no longer disclose details about military supplies to Ukraine, aiming for a strategic ambiguity to complicate adversaries' access to sensitive information, meaning the Germans are about to send something cool to Ukraine, probably. Who knows? Meanwhile, inside of Russia, we have been able to hear that the Ukrainians were able to hit the plant in Bryansk responsible for producing the Strela missiles. It appears that the complex took significant hits, and a decent amount of the assembly halls were completely destroyed, and it does appear that the plant will not be making any more military gear, at least at this point. Moving on from that and into the area of Kasputin Yar, we also were able to hear that the airspace over Kasputin Yar was closed, with a NOTAM being issued for several days. It has been believed at this point that the Russian Federation may be preparing to launch an Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missile, as the U.S. Embassy inside of Kyiv has stated that there is going to be a major air raid that may likely happen on the 12th of May, possibly showing us that the Russian Federation will be conducting an Oreshnik strike on Kyiv. We're not entirely sure if that will be happening yet, but once again, that appears appears to be something that is out there in the imaginations of the public at this moment. Moving on from that and on into the actual frontline news in Ukraine, we have also been able to hear the Ukrainian armed forces are bombing the remaining holdouts of the Russian Federation inside the city of Tetkino, hitting them with hammers that have been dropped by MiG-29s, which we can see in this clip right here as we heard the Erhu from China starting to play in the soundtrack. Here comes the hammers. Oh!
Oh, look at that. Erhu building went to the ground.
Dude, you know, every time I go, oh, I sound like Paulie from The Sopranos whenever he gets called a cheapskate. They'll be like, you cheapskate. He goes, oh! You know, like he's like deeply offended.
And then a beating ensues.
Yeah, and then someone gets hit with a crowbar or something like that. But anyways, that's the end of the clip, and it does appear that they were able to hit that thing hard. Moving on from that and on down into the Kursk region, we also get to see that the Ukrainians were defending against Russian attacks in the middle of the supposed Russian ceasefire. Well, you see here that this was the 1st Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. And you see the Russians creeping down the tree line. That doesn't seem to be ceasefires to me. That seems to be an ongoing attack. Crazy, right? And we see the Ukrainian outposts and positions here. When you see the Russians wandering around and attempting to fire into the Ukrainian positions. And we can now see Russian has been on the blade. Blade. When you see them continue.
Also, by the way, someone said, Matt, how's the motorbike hunting going? Honestly, I'll just give like a straight up quick answer to that. I gave up looking for a motorcycle. The insurance for me at 24 is like $1,000 a month. So that was like 5 or 6 times more expensive than the motorcycle would have cost. So I gave up on that completely.
Yeah, that was Matthew was like, oh sweet, look, you can get like a motorcycle for a low monthly payment of $150 a month. And then he looked at the insurance and he was like, oh my god, it's like $1,000 a month. I was like, oh yeah. I was like,
oh man. In other words, that's the insurance company telling me to basically go take a hike. So that's out for me.
Dude, that was the insurance company saying, keep your dreams, buddy. Like, that was what they were saying to you. It's like, dang, they were brutal with it.
We care for you. Don't go get a motorcycle. Here, we're going to overcharge you to dissuade you.
Meanwhile, my train search has gone, would you like to join, like, a railroad? It's like, oh, man, I don't know. Like, what are the benefits? It's like, well, you get yelled at, and you also make a lot of money. It's like, well, you know, that's an interesting kind of a exchange. Interesting.
Also, by the way, I have pretty much a clean driving record, too. So apparently a 24-year-old on a sport bike that has a decent little bit of power is apparently a huge risk to insurance companies. Who would have known?
Man, the insurance company, I think, is being run by Tony Soprano because that sounded like protection money more so than an insurance plan.
Oh, man. I think they might be factoring in the bike maybe getting stolen because we don't have a covered space to put the garage in or put the motorcycle in. Not the garage. What the hell am I talking about? We don't have anywhere to put the motorcycle in a garage. So that might have been why the insurance was high. Or they could have said you're too young and you might wreck, so you're not going to have one.
Man, I honestly don't know what was up with that, but that killed Matthew and my aspirations to ever even look at motorcycles. Because once he told me that, I wasn't as big into the motorcycles as Matthew was, but I was thinking about maybe getting one. But as soon as I heard that, I was like, hell no! I was like, man, that's more expensive than getting a car. You know, like that's like paying for a very nice car every month. Well, we can see,
one thing that, speaking of insurance, that's one thing the Russians don't have is insurance. Like you can see them getting smashed here and they're getting no compensation for it. They used to get one potato, but it turns out they canceled their insurance because it was too expensive.
Man, they don't even have dental. But moving on from that and into the location unknowns, we also got to see a very lucky Ukrainian soldier. I'm not going to explain this clip. I just want y'all to observe the luck of this guy. You see him walking around. And that was a Russian drone right there that just conked him in the back of the head with a full RPG on it, and it didn't blow up. This guy's the luckiest man alive, because if that thing had blown up right on his head, he would, of course, be dead. But no, look, it just bounced right off. It took him down, but he lived. He actually survived that. Luckiest man alive right there, folks. That guy, he will have to go get lottery tickets for that one, because I've never seen luck like that in my life in the whole war. But anyways, moving on from that, that thing had to have some weight behind it, man, like a can of soup. Like, look at it. It hit him pretty hard. I
You know,
knocked
that's
him
something
forward.
you can put some good power behind is, you know, a can of soup. A rock, not so much, but a can of soup, you can put some power into that.
A brick, you really can't throw it, but a can of soup, you can really put some power behind that. It's like, bro, have you been in like riots before or something to know that? It's like, how the hell do you know a can of soup has some power? I've never seen anyone bring, like, honestly, dude, I only saw cans of soup after he said that. Like, that was the only time I ever saw that afterwards. And I mean, he was honestly right, dude. Like, you actually put more power behind a can of soup. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see a Russian toss barrage. That, by the way, also was occurring in the middle of the ceasefire that Russia said that they were observing, that they put out themselves. But there's the toss barrage in the distance.
А я снимаю.
Ooh, and that's the end of the clip. But once again, showing us a Russian toss MLRS barrage, which, by the way, is using thermobaric rockets. Meanwhile, we also got to see another near miss with a drone. This is actually filmed by a Ukrainian Foreign Legion member, and this was once again a very lucky close call for these guys.
Go, 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 go!
Dang!
Oh, crap.
Me!
That was close.
Yeah, all right. Just a scratch. Asshole!
Well, it's
Hey,
good to
good
know
sport about it.
good to know that he still has balls. Like, he got up and just went right back to it. But that was close. That was very close right there. He's lucky that he didn't get any shrapnel in him, because the blast right there was pretty much directed right at them through that berm. Like, if you watch the clip here, you can actually see that there's a berm right here, and the drone actually blew up on the other side of it. So there was actually a chance that the shrapnel could have traveled through the mound and sprayed out the other side, but it appears that the mound actually was thick enough that it was able to absorb pretty much all of the shrapnel being projected from the RPG. So pretty lucky guys right here again. But moving on from that, we also got the Russian casualty report for the day, and it was looking juicy. No Bobcats,
Oh
though.
man, no Bobcats again. We got 0, but I like that they ended up on a nice figure right here, 3,875. Nice and even looking. Well, not even, but kind of odd. But it looks good to me. But Enforcer, tell us more.
And of course, the losses were looking great. As Miss DC, keeper of the record, stated, the troop losses above the 7-day average of 1,301, which is great to hear. It's only 9 above, but still above. Other categories are below their averages, and drones have second day of very low losses, which is actually quite rare at this point in the war. But nevertheless, we were able to hear that 1,310 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 7 APCs, 106 supply trucks, 4 main battle tanks, 49 artillery pieces, 36 drones, and 1 anti-aircraft system. A pretty nice day overall, not the record-breaking days that we've seen before, but still a pretty decent day, all things considered. Moving on from that and into the area of Vovchansk, we were able to see that a Russian holdout was blown up with some explosives today by Ukraine. Take a look at this. This is that dog unit. They got that dog in them. But anyways, we can see in the clip right here that the Russians, they wander into building. Actually, I'm not really sure who that is. That might be the Ukrainians. We now see them wandering away. I think those are the Ukrainians. I think they just threw the bomb in. Yeah, it was the Ukrainians. And the bomb went off inside the basement. And you see here the building getting hit again. This time, the entire left side of the building now coming down. And also, as Zim said, 964,000 losses. Is that KIA or KIA and wounded in action? That's both. So we're assuming that about a third of those are killed in action, but the other 2/3 are wounded in action. But a casualty is a casualty. A casualty just knocks someone out of the fighting for good, whether they're wounded or killed. So about 1 million Russians have gone into the war and have been put out either by death or wounding. But that's the end of that clip right there. And moving on from that and on into our next one further down and in the Seversk area, we also were able to see Russian forces getting hit down here. Take a look at this. The 118th Territorial Defense Forces have been making sure to stop those Russians from advancing, because once again, oddly enough, this actually occurred, by the way, folks, on the 9th of May. In the middle of the Russian ceasefire, they were still attempting offensives, not really even following their own ceasefire and really showing a lack of follow-through and goodwill by the Russians. But we can see them just slamming these vehicles here. Oh, they got a couple of guys with that one. But we can see here they are hitting a Russian BMP that had a cope cage over it. We now see them lining up to hit a Lada, it appears. Actually, they hit the Lada in front of it. And we see them here flying back in and slamming them again.
This is that Russo Riz. They riz up the Russians with these very disposable drones here with a small piece of, spicy on it.
Man, sorry to hear about your comrade that died. He gets 5 big booms. Boom! Like, that's
Oh man, if you get taken out in the war to get a shout out by the Costco boys, that's a tough one right there.
Man, honestly, man, I feel sorry for that guy who got that message too, because it's like no one's gonna remember him for who he was. They're just gonna remember him the guy that got 5 big booms. It's like, man, that's honestly kind of a shame, honestly.
What are they called again? Is it the Costco boys or what
The
is
Costco
it? What's it
guys.
called? The Costco guys.
Costco
Okay.
guys. Honestly, man, I'm not a really big respecter of that shtick. It's like it's a little bit of it's an odd one. Very very. Also, it's like free sponsoring. I don't really get the whole thing. But anyways, moving on from that, we did get to see Russian armor getting hit near Botanivka. Take a look at this. The cease and desist tourneys are on their way for what's in the top right. They call it worm busters, but I don't think LA cares. Anyways, we can see the Ukrainian drones coming in and hitting this MTLB. Also, why was this Russian running so cartoonishly beforehand, Matthew? Did you see that? Look at him. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, it's like, what is he doing?
How to get run over by his own tank.
Yeah, he's about to get, like plowed like a field.
Oh.
That sounded wrong.
Yeah. Oh, man. Hey, Warner Brother.
Man, the Russians believe not in worm busters or Warner Brother. They believe in warm brother, and warm it with the burning corpse of your tank.
Warm a bastard.
Warm a bitch.
Oh man. Warm a bitch.
Oh man, that thing is cooking up quite nicely down there. Look at that go.
Oh.
Well, we're going to be moving on from that clip. That was just, some debris and combat footage and stuff. You know how it is. But nevertheless, we are going to be moving on from that and showing the 79th continuing to defend the area near CEASEFIRE. But moving on from that part of the clip, and moving on from those clips in general, we're going to be moving on further down the line and towards Tourette's, because we were able to see an SBU drone attack in this area. We see them here hitting the Russian Lada into pieces. Oh my lord! That one just went nuclear. It appears to have possibly been a fuel explosion. We can also see another hit right here as well. And we see them here. Oh, excuse you, man.
Thank you.
Man, you're welcome. Also, someone just sent in a $5 super chat to tell us something that we're non-negotiable on. So there he goes. Thank you for the $5. But anyways, we can see the Ukrainians continue to hit the Russian positions.
He threw in a $5 super chat just to say, could you please roast me? Yes. Thank you for the donation, comrade. You shall donate finally to the Ukrainian Success Fund. Thank you very much.
This clown gets on a channel that's pro-American and pro-Western and throws in $5 to say, I want to hear what I want to hear, not this bullshit. It's like, well, you're going to get banned and clowned on, and then you also gave us $5. So, it's like, honestly, that was win-win for us. We get to clown on you, and we get free money. I mean, that was great all around. But anyways, moving on from that, and towards Otrotine, we also get to see the Fighting 93rd hit the Russian forces. And take a little gander at this, folks. You see them here landing their first hit. And landing their second hit. And landing the third. And landing the fourth. May the fourth be with you. Get it, folks? It's like a Star Wars reference. And we see that drone literally just casually entering a bunker and blowing up. We see them continuing to hit Russian outposts in the area. Quite successfully, mind you. I'm not going to lie, Matthew. The food we ate earlier really didn't hold me over that well.
Yeah, I got to say, Culver's is tasty, but it's not something... I think it actually has a lot of calories in it. That's the weird thing. Like, it feels like it's fattening, but it doesn't hold you over long. It's like a lose-lose.
Man, Taco Bell, on the other hand, that holds you over for a long time right there.
Might have to start eating healthy again.
What do you mean by that?
Like, I doubt that Taco Bell and Culver's would be in the health like nut category. I think that'd probably be in the bad category.
But think about it, Matthew. All the Taco Bell is this boiled beef, rice, and some other things. But it's not really anything entirely unhealthy when you think about it. It's not like a greasy burger or anything like that. I mean, like the beef is, I think, literally boiled.
I think it's the salt content. That's what gets you because it's loaded with sodium. Pretty much every fast food like beef patty.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. Man, I think Matthew's shooting for Chipotle or Cava, most likely. But with that, that's the end of that.
Sadly, they're closed.
Oh, damn it. But anyways, moving on from that. And on east of Celadovia, we also got to see this MLS getting destroyed. From the Ivan Franco group, or as we call him, Borko from The Sopranos. We can see here that the drone is coming on in. Hector Jack said, the day bots start donating money will be truly awesome. Wouldn't that be incredible if we had, like, bots come in, like, who threw in, like, thousands of dollars to just crap on us? Like, we could actually make sure that the business would be running very well. We could expand operations to that point if they did that. Honestly, I wouldn't be against it at all. I'm totally fine with people taking a shot at this channel, but they have to throw in a minimum of $500 each time they do it, so that way we can make sure to continue our operations and continue to piss them off well into the future. So that way they have a reason to be angry. But anyways, we can see here the drone coming on in. You see here?
Also, by the way, big thanks to everybody for the massive support tonight, by the way. I'm seeing that in the live chat. We do appreciate that.
Yeah, we thank you everyone for the massive support, by the way. It's an amazing thing, and it does help us to keep this thing running day in and day out. We also get to see the Ukrainians hit a grad down onto the launchers. And also, like that's speaking about that super chat of the guy who got banned. He says, "I want to see the real news," but that's just code word for "I want to see pro-Russian propaganda" these days, because that's what that means in the section. Nobody anywhere wants to see real news. They want to see their side winning unconditionally. So if someone comes on their channel and says they want to see the real news, they're not wanting to actually see unbiased news coverage because it actually still is painting Ukraine in a pretty good light. What they want to see is Russia winning. That's what they want. But we see them here continuing to give a shellacking to the Russians. They're not giving them any breaks.
This footage is being observed by the watchflies of Mr. Charlie Chaplin lookalike here, IFG.
Man, that's like a BFG.
It's like a BLT.
Man, what does BFG stand for? Big effing giant. It's like, man, like that movie had some bad marketing that went in with it, man. You remember that weird movie that came out like years ago called the BFG or whatever?
I've never heard of that movie in my entire life.
No way. I remember we like kidded on it like years ago. But anyways, we also get to see the 82nd Air Division doing their work near to the area of Pokrovsk as well today with a mechanical bird. This is the wild division of the 82nd. John Cena's here for some reason, or as we should call him, John Cena.
I thought you meant the chat. There's actual John Cena. Hey, look, there's that guy right there, that British guy who said, "Oh, nice."
Man, we're getting just memes today, man. It's just a great number of memes. Now we have a cat. You see them hitting an artillery piece. They're now hitting a main battle tank. We now see the guy from like that food movie thing, you know?
Yeah, meatballs with a chance of rain, or cloudy
meatballs with a chance of rain.
I don't know what the hell the name was, man. I'm butchering it.
Would you like some rain with your meatballs? And then we got Shrek there, I think from like Shrek 4, I think.
Is that like Shanghai Shrek?
I don't know, man. Honestly, though, Shrek has like a cult following. And then we have this guy. I forgot. He's from the Spider-Man movies, but I forgot his name.
I thought he was in Glorious Bastards for a minute. I got confused.
But that's the end of the clip right there. And a huge shout out to Jocelyn for the amazing support. Thank you so much. Hey! And moving on from that and over to Shevchenko, we also got to see the Ukrainians dropping some Russians in the Shevchenko village. The 155th Brigade was doing this work right here. Here's a Russian. Here is a Russian, folks. Oh, And he's down for the count. Many of them are down for the count. But moving on from that clip, we also get to see the 14th Brigade hitting some other Russian forces right here. Aw, man. Cloudy with a Chance at Meatballs is the movie, but I can give you meatballs with a chance at rain. Aw, man.
I don't even know what that means.
Get out of here, you. I don't even know what that means. Man, I'm telling you, we on top of the jokes tonight, man, for real.
That one, we can't even repeat that joke.
Man, I don't even know what the hell that means either. It's like I can't even repeat it because I really don't know. But moving on from that and down into Kurakove, we also got to see the Russians getting hit down here too. Take a look at this. The Russians are getting hit everywhere. Honestly, this war has become the drone wars because you never really see actual infantry fighting going on anymore. It's just nothing but drone activity. But they are getting pretty damn good with flying these things. I mean, they're actually flying it through the middle of a forested tree line right now. Oh, there they are. And sleep time. They sleep on job.
Isn't it crazy when you really think about it? Speaking of how often the Ukrainians and Russians use drones to pretty much fight the entire war at this point, the Indians and Pakistanis adopted the exact same tactic, like when they were launching their attacks, like sending drones back and forth to go circle around the capitals and everywhere. The drones is the way forward, and everybody's adopted that pretty quick.
Yeah, drone warfare, I think, is the only way forward at this point. But we also even got to see more FPV drones hitting Russian forces in the 78th Battalion further south near Zaporizhzhia, which you can see in this clip right here. It's a really bizarre thing, man, to think that warfare has pretty much moved in just a couple of years to being entirely drone-based for the large part.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing because I think the drones were supposed to, ideally, it was supposed to reduce the human cost in war, but actually, it's actually increasing the human cost in war. It's having the opposite effect because people thought that drones are going to be fighting drones, but it turns out that drones are attacking the people on the ground one by one, which was not really foreseen by the analysts in the past.
Yeah, nobody really expected. Honestly, man, any evolution in war just makes war more deadly for the people involved.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever going to be what they'd call like a peaceable or a civil war, like like as in civil and war, not like a civil war between like two factions in the country, but like a war that's civil. That's never going to happen. That would sort of like defeat the purpose of a war, I think.
Yeah, I honestly think, man, as time continues to progress, wars are just going to keep getting deadlier and deadlier as a standard to be an infantryman in the field. Because it's just getting absolutely absurd at this point. You really can't even have infantry out there because the casualty rate is so high.
Yeah, it's getting pretty high. Honestly, the footage that we're watching here of the soldiers getting taken out by the Ukrainians every single day, that shows you also that creates a humongous terror aspect of the war as well. Like the soldiers now don't have to just contend with other soldiers on the ground that are fighting. Now they have to always be looking over their shoulders, and the psychological aspect of that is probably making the war 10 times more like insufferable than it was to even begin with.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. Remember, man, at the beginning of the war when there was actually a lot of infantry firefights and such things, and then over that time through to like the first year and a half, and then we started seeing a decent amount of drones supporting the infantry. And nowadays we see that there's hardly any infantry battles at all. It's almost all like drone based before they even get within shooting range of enemy infantry.
Yeah, it's just a tough situation with those. I'm telling you, it's just really bad.
And we also see them knocking out this BMD-4 right here. And good night to Chicken Little.
Also, Jeffrey Cohn said, how will the U.S. adapt militarily to drone warfare, particularly in a case of a Pacific War versus China? I think if we went to war with China, in my opinion, I think that drone warfare would be on a different level than what Ukraine and Russia is having, or even Pakistan and India. It would be on a much more advanced level because we're working with stealth drones in a much more advanced sense of what Russia has by any means, or even like other countries. So it would be a lot more advanced and probably a lot more deadly because we probably have drones that can probably sneak past all their air defenses, I'd imagine, that we probably have in the works. So it would be a whole nother animal, but generally very heavy on drone warfare.
It would be an absolutely insane thing to see. The kind of drone technology that we have is a lot more fleshed out and well researched, and really China's to an extent as well, than really any other country we've seen going at it so far. So if we went to war with China, the drone warfare on both ends would be unprecedented to what we've seen so far. It would be absolutely insane. But moving on from that and on up to Kyiv, it is time for us to get to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky from today. Wait a minute, he doesn't actually have a speech there. Never mind, we'll play this one, because this is good enough. Because we need a short moment to shove food in face and drink small water. So with that, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Щойно говорив з президентом Трампом. Хороша розмова, дуже тепла, конструктивна. Привітали одне одного і наші народи з Днем Перемоги у Другій світовій війні. 80 років перемозі над нацизмом. Перемозі в Європі всіх народів разом, які здолали нацизм. Дуже важливо, що та спільна перемога, спільна робота союзників стали основою для миру і міжнародного права, для нормального життя багатьох народів. Зараз це життя треба захищати, відновлювати, піднімати з руїн після російських ударів. Так само потрібно разом працювати, щоб мир був. Ми говорили з президентом про спільні дії, про підтримку Сполучених Штатів Америки, яка так потрібна, про тиск на Росію, тиск заради миру. Ми обговорили ситуацію на фронті. Ми обговорили дипломатичну роботу, говорили про те, як наблизити реальне і тривале припинення вогню. Щонайменше на 30 днів, і це те, що може дати багато шансів для дипломатії. Україна готова до повного припинення вогню прямо сьогодні, прямо з цієї хвилини. На 30 днів тиші. Тільки по-справжньому. Щоб не було ударів, ракет, дронів, щоб не було цих сотень штурмів на фронті. Потрібно, щоб росіяни відповіли на це адекватно, підтримали припинення вогню. Вони повинні довести свою готовність. Готовність завершувати війну. І це не перша. Ми вкотре це пропонуємо. 30 днів, які можуть стати початком років миру. Саме припинення вогню, тривале, надійне, буде реальним показником руху до миру. Америка може з цим допомогти. Світ потребує Америки так само, як і 80 років тому. Звісно, ми говорили сьогодні про нашу угоду про економічне партнерство з Америкою. Ми відзначили, наскільки важливо, щоб наші відносини протягом десятиліть зміцнювали наші країни. І це буде. Я доручив команді оперативно працювати над створенням спільного українсько-американського фонду інвестицій. Інвестицій у наше відновлення. Також погодили з президентом Трампом наші наступні контакти. І взагалі сьогодні дуже активний день. Я говорив з новим канцлером Німеччини Фрідріхом Мерцем. Ми домовились про співпрацю. Вже є конкретні речі, які ми можемо зробити разом. Будуть рішення. Я говорив сьогодні з президенткою Єврокомісії Урсулою фон дер Ляєн. Ми обговорили наші кроки, вступ в Євросоюз, наші перемовини, нашу оборонну підтримку, підтримку для нашої держави, для нашої стійкості. Ми маємо разом і надалі захищати Україну і всю нашу Європу. Саме це ми і робимо. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає. Дякую всім, хто захищає наші національні інтереси, нашу незалежність. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
And Herom Slava.
Oh man, what with
I got
that?
caught lacking.
Man, the guy called lagging right there. I was like, is he gone? Did he like disconnect? But anyways, that is the end of speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1172 of the news from around the world. And with that, we're going to be moving on to the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. And boy, howdy folks, what a fun and fascinating segment it is. We get to always talk about literally anything and everything during the entirety of this question segment, and it's always a fun little moment here. We love to have it. And I keep on seeing, folks, people bringing up all kinds of things, really a whole bunch of random things. And to be honest, folks, we love to have random things brought up in the question segment. Yes, we do talk about war, but we always don't have to talk about everything about war. It can be about y'all's interests, where you're from, what you like to eat, where you'd like to see, cool stuff that you know, anything really. We always have a fun time getting to chit chat with you all about literally anything and everything. And of course, if you do have questions about the war, we'd love to answer those as well. We really just like to talk about anything at this point. You know, it's just a fun little chit chat segment that we get to have with all of y'all. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, by the way, folks, I'm trying to say that tonight so that way hopefully people will talk about cool little things like food or places to see and travel to, or cars or motorcycles or trains or planes, really anything, because we can talk about it all, folks. We have enough surface level knowledge to talk about it, and then some know-it-all will come in here and tell us we're wrong. But anyways, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping to our final question segment of the night, we do have a very generous super chat for our first one for the segment, going to Jocelyn, who puts in a $100 donation, actually a massive support.
Damn.
And thank you very much, Jocelyn, for the biggest super chat of the night, which is that 100, and we do appreciate that very much, Jocelyn. And she said, "I love the channel, and thank you for keeping everyone in the loop during these crazy times."
And I thank you so much for the massive support, Jocelyn. And I thank you for loving the channel and for enjoying us, keeping everyone in the loop during these crazy times. I gotta admit, these are actually crazy times, even compared to the 70s. Which I was trying to say, oh, look at these times. These are really, wild times. Actually, this is much crazier than I think anything that's been seen since the end of World War II, at least with everything going on around the world all at the same time. I got to thank you so much for the support and helping us to keep covering all of this news, because it is absolutely nuts, absolutely insane to see everything going on around the world. And I've got to be honest with you, it really is taking a lot more these days to run the stream. It takes a lot out of me at every day, energy-wise, to cover this stuff, because mentally this used to be so easy. It used to just be Ukraine, Russia. External parties might be involved. Now it's Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Iran, India, Pakistan, Yemen, the United States, Hezbollah, Israel, Syria, Turkey, Syria, Israel, let's see here, Pakistan, India, Taiwan, China, Japan, China, South Korea, North Korea, South Korea, China, South Korea, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, U.S. tariffs on China, let's see, trade war between the two, let's see here, what else? Oh, let's see. Let me think of everything that we have to think about on some given days. Oh yeah, Europe doing its own thing.
Situation?
The Australia situation?
Yeah, with China going down there to intimidate them.
Oh yeah, China, Australia, China, New Zealand, Australia, China, the Philippines, China, Vietnam, China, China, Vietnam. Oh brother, what else do we have? Let's see. I'm trying to.
The Irish and the British.
Oh, that's kind of died down for the most part, luckily.
Oh, well.
That was like 30 years ago, Matthew. I mean, times have changed. Times have changed, Matthew. But
isn't Beirut playing tomorrow?
No, Matthew. I think he's actually been retired for a year. I think.
Rats.
Matthew, I was just wondering, Matthew, are they gonna be playing that old music on the Shinnick Daddy radio from Radio City?
Oh yeah, Radio City. You mean Diamond City?
Well, actually, Matthew, I just got off of the Southern Crescent, actually from Washington. I had a good talk with all the senators up there. I actually talked to Senator McCarthy about the un-American activities and all the communists in Hollywood. Kind of crazy thing, And also, man, another thing, man, that's crazy. I just got done seeing the Declaration of Independence being written. All kinds of stuff going on. It's a crazy thing these days. I'm just kidding about all that stuff, by the way. Don't want to sound like we're crazy, although we really are. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support, because there is a load going on, all jokes aside, in the world. It is exhausting to cover it all, but we're happy to know that people really are enjoying all of the effort. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So our next super chat goes to Howard Mendelson. And thank you very much, Howard, for that $50 support. And we do appreciate that very much. And Howard, that's very generous of you. And he said, isn't this the 11,385th time that the ceasefire they've had in the last 1,300 years?
Yeah, pretty, kind of for the large part, yeah. I mean, it's like ceasefires being broken isn't nothing entirely new. It's just that so many of them being broken in like less than a couple of weeks. It's kind of the crazy part about it. It's like, wow, ceasefires don't mean squat this week. And that's kind of the funny thing about it. But yeah, the truth is that there's been thousands of ceasefires and truces that have been broken over 1,000 years at this point. So it's nothing exceptional in like a major historical framework, but for the sheer number of ceasefires broken just in the past 2 weeks, it's absolutely absurd. And I don't really think there's a lot of periods in history where we would see such a thing like this on so many conflicts around the world, breaking their ceasefires pretty much all within the same time period. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. Also, get this, by the way. This is a brand new statement just made by Putin. Apparently, he has made a new statement, and this is a statement. Putin says, we do not rule out a ceasefire, a real ceasefire, after negotiations. So someone interpret that one for me.
Oh my god, it's the same shit.
What does that even mean?
That's the same shit. It means, dude, that they will not have a ceasefire unless if Ukraine meets their terms. That's exactly what he said before. This is the same thing. So going to Ankara is totally useless for Ukraine. They might as well just say we're not going, because they'll just be wasting their time. Well, honestly, I should say that they should go, just to show without a doubt to the United States that the Russians don't mean anything that they're saying. That is crazy though, dude. That's literally like, that's exactly what they've said before, man. You remember they said, we are totally behind the ceasefire, just that Ukraine has to meet our conditions to get into it, which was to give them the rest of Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson that was under their control, and also not use the ceasefire to rearm or accept any new weapons. So it's literally
Honestly,
the same thing.
The yanking the chain of the United States, because speaking of that, the U.S. president just put out a post, literally, I think it was like 10 or 15 minutes ago, and he had said that this is going to be a historic week because Putin's finally agreed to unconditional talks, and now it's really promising. This is going to all come together. And now Putin has said, after yanking his chain yet again, that they do not rule out a ceasefire, a real ceasefire, after negotiations. I mean, that's just insane.
Oh my lord, man! They just need to stop talking to the Russians at this point. They're making us look like an embarrassment with how we keep on just getting yanked like that over and over. But we just need to give a lot of bombs to Ukraine, and eventually we'll knock enough sense into the Russians that they actually will talk to us and talk to us realistically. That's what I'm thinking at this point. If y'all think that that's a smart idea, make sure to put Enforcer for President down in the live chat below, because I think that that's the only way we'll be able to get them to the negotiating table is to bomb them into the negotiating table. So with that, I hope that addresses that breaking news well. Thank you for sharing that with us, Matthew, because it sounds like they're saying the same thing they've been saying for months now, and they're just repackaging it into a different way. But with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, Ms. Disa said, have you seen the photo of the coalition of the willing that was meeting with Ukraine? I have seen it. The two notable figures in it was obviously Zelensky, you had Macron, and also you had Starmer from Britain in there as well. They said they met with this coalition and they met with Zelensky, and then immediately after it was over, they all got on a phone call and spoke to the U.S. president. They said, I think they said the phone call went well. I think it is. But of course, it's very subjective what well means. It's not really clear what that means. But the fact that there is a nice coalition, honestly, it's the same people that have been vying for Ukraine to win the entire time, which is France and Britain. They've been really staunch supporters of Ukraine. They've never really wavered on that. So it's the same thing. But I have seen the photo though.
I've seen the photo too. Also, I just saw someone say Enforcer is Brat. How dare you? Like how dare you? Man, next thing you know, they're gonna be saying Enforcer is Demir. I'm gonna be like, oh damn it. I'm gonna be like, it's the campaign for 2024 all over again. But beyond that, I would definitely have to say, man, that this is going nowhere. We said this earlier on stream, and it's going nowhere fast, man. It literally got to nowhere within the whole show that we're running right now.
Yeah, it's just crazy. It went nowhere fast, like the old saying goes.
Man, nuts, honestly. Just nuts, I tell you. And so, anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that well. nutty stuff, absolutely predictable stuff, but it happened so fast it actually made my head spin. But anyways, with that, we are going to be on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Sparky107107. He puts in a very generous 50 as well. And thank you very much, Sparky, for the 50 once again. And we do appreciate it very much. And they said, come to my meet and greet. I want to meet you guys. And it's about trains. And there is Wi-Fi everywhere, so you can still do the show. And everyone needs some fun in life. And come to my meet and greet. And you guys are celebs. Celebs, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, we're not really celebs, but thank you for the compliment, though. I do appreciate the kind words. But Enforcer, what say you?
Celebs? I say we're more like celery. Get it? It's kind of similar, at least spelling-wise. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support, Sparky. And I thank you for the invitation. And I have to say, I think I left a comment on your channel a while ago, actually, after you sent in the super chat the first time. And I said, hey, nice trains. Because I actually saw that you have a CSX L&N heritage unit that you have. And I was really impressed with that. I like that. I like the CSX L&N heritage unit. Let me go show you the CSX L&N heritage unit. Let me go show you here. Here we go. You see, folks, it's the L&N heritage unit. I love the Louisville and Nashville. I freaking love the Louisville and Nashville. It's my favorite railroad ever. And nowadays it's a part of CSX through the Seaboard system. Well, the Seaboard Family Line system. But anyways, I like this railroad. I like it. What can I say? Oh, look, there's the Seaboard system right there, which was also the Seaboard Coastline L&N family system before that, and then they turned into Seaboard to make it less confusing. And then Seaboard system merged with Chessie system, and then they turned into CSX, Chessie Seaboard Consolidated. Really cool company. I like that you have those heritage units. I gotta say, nice job on you for that. And also, one other thing I gotta say is, Matthew, they actually have a GP40 that still sports, at least on the front end, the old L&N colors. Look at that.
That is historic right there. Look at that.
That picture was really grainy. Here we go. Here's a better one. Look at that, Matthew. Look at that. It's like the old days, I tell you. It's like the old days.
L&N. Look at that.
Man, I gotta tell you, absolutely impressive. Real something to see there. I love it. Did I tell you, folks, that I love the L&N? I love the L&N. It's a great railroad. They had great benefits and everything. But beyond that, one thing I will say, as I do thank you so much for the support, and I thank you for the invitation. Sadly, though, we wouldn't be able to go, because you are up in Canada, and for us to be able to get into Canada, we would have to travel out of the country, which would take a decent amount of money in time. And sadly, another thing is that it takes a lot for us to be able to run this show. My setup is not necessarily mobile, because we have pretty much an entire sound studio built around me specifically, because it might come through on the mic, I'm not really sure, but I'm a very, very loud person. And so for us to be able to run our show, we have to have an entire, pretty much, infrastructure built specifically around me, so that we don't have the noise bleeding out to wherever Matthew is, or to other people, and annoying them badly. Because that's happened before when we were in an apartment. But I do thank you so much for the invitation and the offer, and I wish that we could. It's just that, sadly, it would be a really tough thing to pull off. And also, we just got done, technically, with 2 trips. I went on a trip on my own out to the Seattle area, and then Matthew and me went on another trip to Seattle and West Palm Beach. And then we honestly wish that we had just stayed in Seattle, because West Palm Beach wasn't really it. It was, like, Seattle was really cool. West Palm Beach was, it was iffy. But I do thank you so much for the support and the kind offer. That's very kind of you, and I wish I could take you up on that, because I really wish that I could spend a little bit more time on the train hobby. Like, I've gotten a couple of model trains and stuff that I have sitting around right now, and today I did end up doing something revolutionary. Speaking about model trains, I took apart a boxcar. I took the axles off and everything, and it's just the boxcar now without the trucks and everything. And I was going to see about figuring out how much I could take it apart so that way I could weather it and weather up my first boxcar for my little model railroad of the future, which isn't going to be happening for months still. But that is that is something that I'm working on right now, as a matter of fact, and hopefully I will be able to get that off the ground at some point. I don't know when, because usually when we get off these streams, we get done working, we are exhausted. So usually I just either read a book, or I watch YouTube, or I might play a game. And that time is rare these days, even on top of that. Or there's the rare instance where we have just enough time that we will drive down to the Irondale yard and we will watch all of the people working for the Norfolk and Southern Railroad operating their trains, which is pretty neat, because they are loud and they shake the ground. And who doesn't like an engine that's so loud that it shakes the ground? That's just incredibly cool. So With that, I hope that does address that well. I hate to say though that we wouldn't be able to go, but I do have to say that I'm impressed with your layout. You still are working on it, as I saw in the videos, but it is massive and super impressive. I was actually blown away with it, and I like that you have CSX stuff, because CSX is the spiritual successor of the LNN, and I absolutely freaking love the LNN. So if y'all ever want to send fan mail to us, and you want to know, like, if Enforcer Matt's thing is Bobcat stuff, what would be the Enforcer's thing to send them? It would be L&N Railroad stuff. Like, I'm just a huge sucker for it. I actually got a really cool thing. Let's see, L&N Centennial, Centennial. Let me go see if I can get the deck of cards, because I actually have one of these, and it's original, and it's still in its cellophane wrapping. But I actually have this deck right here, the one in blue, the Centennial Anniversary of the L&N Railroad playing cards, which is actually really cool looking. I have never opened them. They're still in their cellophane wrapping, but one day I want to open them, and I want to actually see what the cards looked like, because I have no clue what they look like at all. Is this what they look like? Oh, those are actually really cool, man. They're like 1950s stylized.
Yeah, it's pretty neat looking.
Also, mine didn't come in that kind of a little package right there. This is $55. By the way, y'all, I got mine for $8.50, so it was actually pretty cheap. But
$8.50.
Yeah, $8.50.
Oh, $8.50. I was about to say, man, $8.50. I thought you meant like $850. I was about to say, man, are you crazy?
Oh, hell no, I wouldn't pay $850 for a deck of playing cards. Like, $8.50 was fine with me. But there is also something else really cool that I want. I want the L&N rule book, like from somewhere. I don't know, that's like a huge, like, big no-no thing in like the railroad world to ever deal with like rule books outside of the railroad itself, because someone's going to like execute you or like knock your kneecaps out. But I personally want one. Obviously, it would be cool to have one, and the L&N doesn't exist anymore, so, you know, what would it hurt? But beyond that, I hope that does address it well. And also, Richard Philpott said, L&N versus Pennsylvania Railroad. Pennsylvania Railroad I'm not going to say anything mean to it, because someone's going to like actually like hunt me down for that one. But the Pennsylvania Railroad is the standard railroad of the world that isn't standard by any means, and is only standard to itself. There is nothing from the Pennsylvania Railroad that existed in any other railroad. Like, it standardized its own standards, but it didn't standardize anything for any other American railroad. Like, for example, the L&N actually standardized creosoting railroad ties. Like, the L&N was the first company in America that actually creosoted its railroad ties. No other one did that before they did, and they were the ones to standardize that across the board. The L&N also was the company that generally standardized, at least in the South, standard gauge, because before that, the entirety of all Southern railways ran in a broad gauge. The L&N was the first railroad in the South that actually really ran off of a standard gauge of 4 feet 8.5 inches. Although technically it was 4 feet 9 inches for a long time, and then they bumped it on down to 4 feet 8.5 inches a little while after that. But they were the first one to standardize that throughout the South. The L&N was also one of the first railroads in the South that started dieselification, which was also a really big thing because it cut down a lot on cost. Although they were a huge coal mover, they actually were one of the first in the South to start dieselification. Another big thing that they were also a standardizer of was ballasting their tracks. The L&N actually was a very prosperous and wealthy railroad throughout most of their history, so they had a lot of additional money to just throw into ballasting their tracks, which not really a lot of people did back in the day, at least in the earlier times of railroading. Usually there was no ballast under the tracks, but the L&N made that a fairly standard thing. Let's see here. What else did the L&N do that was cool? The L&N was one of the few companies that was really forward with helping out their workers. They would provide a lot of benefits to them, really without a lot of strikes being necessary to achieve that, which is completely different than the Pennsylvania Railroad, which would just like actively go out of their way, kind of like the Santa Fe, to screw people over. So generally, I'd say that, in my opinion, like, the L&N is my favorite railroad, in my opinion, because one, it pretty much built Alabama as we see it today. The only major city in Alabama that didn't have any direct Louisville and Nashville railroad connection was, I believe, Tuscaloosa. Let me go check that, though. L&N service map. Or route map. So here we go. This is the Louisville and Nashville map. So yeah, Tuscaloosa wasn't directly connected to the Birmingham Well, the LNN's main line. But as you can see here, this is a cool thing about the LNN. It had a connection to Decatur. It also had a connection to the Escambia, Coleman. It actually founded the town of Coleman and the city of Birmingham. It also built up Montgomery, Alabama, and my hometown of Wetumpka was also connected to the LNN line. It also built up Selma when Selma was an actual like city. Like it's what we call a PvP lobby now. But back when it was an actual city, it was connected to the LNN route. It also built up Mobile. It also pretty much ran the entirety of the Southern Crescent Limited, all the way from Atlanta down to the area of New Orleans through the, I believe it was the West of Georgia Railway, which was leased. Yeah, it's the Georgia Railroad, which was leased by the LNN. It was a great railroad. An amazing railroad, an incredible one. And so, in my opinion, there's just nothing that compares. The Louisville and Nashville is by far, in my opinion, better than the Pennsylvania, or the Pennsy as people would call it. And also, I saw, what does the ballast iron of the tracks achieve? So the ballast iron of the tracks achieves largely just planning the tracks in place. So it stops the ties from shifting around, and also it makes sure that there is not a possibility of derailment. Because when the tracks are just sitting on a graded level without ballast, there is actually a chance that the tracks could end up moving a bit, and that means that you have to observe a slower speed limit through those areas. When you ballast the tracks, it ensures a smoother ride, meaning that there's a greater amount of passenger comfort. It also ensures a smoother ride, decreasing the amount of derailments, and it also ensures that you can maintain higher speed limits on ballasted tracks. So there's a decent amount of reasons to have ballasted track. It's just that back in the day, in the early days of railroading, the access to that much ballast was a little bit rough to find because it wasn't produced in that kind of volume. So it was a fairly gradual kind of a process to ballast a lot of the roads, and then later on you have to continue maintaining that ballast, and so you have to reballast those tracks pretty continuously, which ends up taking a decent amount of upkeep. Nowadays it costs, I think, about $8,000 in maintenance per year per mile of rail. Back in the day, before they ballasted the tracks, it was somewhere around, I think it was like $500 to maintain each mile of rail, somewhere around there. So, you know, it kind of reflects in the cost. And also the weight of the rails has gotten a lot higher as well, because back in the day, it was pretty standard to have 63-pound rails. Nowadays, I think the standard is somewhere around 128-pound rail or higher for main lines, which is a very expensive kind of a rail, just because of how much more steel is needed to make it. But anyways, with that, hope that does address that well. I hope that was a railroad talk of the night right there. But I thank you so much once again for the invitation. I hope that addresses that well, and I hope that scratches our railroad itch. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, Sparky. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Samuel Wenskog, who puts in a very generous $51 donation. I believe it is in Swedish kroners originally, and it is 500 Swedish kroner. And thank you very much, Samuel, for the generous support as well. He said, "What kind of motorcycles are you boys looking at with that kind of insurance?" And I'm picking up an Indian Scout Bobber next week.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Also, by the way, very cool, by the way. I've seen those Indian Scout Bobbers in person. Those are pretty neat. I believe that is a cruiser. I'm pretty sure. I think Indian only makes cruisers. And yeah, that's definitely a cruiser right there. That's pretty cool looking, though. I like that. And probably has a really good sound to it. But to answer your question, though, the type of motorcycle I was looking at was going to be either a Yamaha FZ07. That was one of them. And I'd also consider, for a brief minute before I learned about the maintenance, I was going to look at a Ducati, I believe it's called a Hyper Motard 690, I believe. It's like the smaller version of the large, supermoto style bike that they make. But the maintenance on those are a little bit too steep, I would say. I don't want to invest that kind of money in a bike. So I was probably going to go for the Yamaha, the FZ09. But any sport bike above 600cc is going to pretty much be insane with the insurance at my age. So I think I'm going to have to wait. But if it wasn't for the insurance, though, I would probably want to go ahead and get one. Because I love riding motorcycles. I've been riding motorcycles for probably about 45 years before now, until I sold mine a while back. So the only reason I sold it is because the drivers in Alabama don't really respect motorcyclists, and they kind of go out of their way to try to run you off the road most times. But I was going to try to get back to it and maybe just ride the back roads. But unfortunately, though, the insurance kind of ruled that out for me. But Enforcer, what say you?
This is the kind of motorcycle that I'd want to get, a Halcyon 450. I wish they had a little bit more power, because Matthew tells me that these would be greatly underpowered, and I generally have to agree. But I like the style of them. I think they really look cool, and it looks like it'd be pretty fun to ride. So that would be the one I would want to get if the insurance wasn't insane. But the insurance is going to be insane for both of us. So we wouldn't be able to ride the thing around at all.
Oh, and that right there, the insurance probably wouldn't be much at all. It'd probably be like maybe $500 a year or something. It's just got barely any power. It's somewhat inexpensive compared to other bikes, and you really can't get in much trouble with that one, honestly, to be straight up.
See, Matthew, that's why we had to get Halcyon 450s. That would be a great idea, an amazing idea. But anyways, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. But that would be the motorcycle that I'd want to get just for the style points, because they always look cool, no matter what color they're in or what customizations they get. They're just really neat to me. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. Also, by the way, someone said the 690 is a sick bike. Show them a picture of that one real quick, by the way. The Ducati 690, that should pull it up, just that alone. It's a pretty cool looking supermoto style bike. I know a lot of people aren't huge fans of this. Also, click on the other one that's below it. It's that one. That's the paint job. It's really nice looking. Not everybody's a huge fan of that. It's kind of like a dirt bike supermoto style of motorcycle, but I've always been intrigued by them because they always look fun. They look like you can really kind of have fun in like a city environment with it, which is where we live. And not super fast top end, but it's got a lot of grunt, like a lot of torque. So it's pretty cool for that reason. But overall, though, if I wanted one for traveling down the interstate, I probably wouldn't go with this one because there's obviously no windscreen or anything on it. That would probably be disastrous. But if you had to go for a bigger one that was good for the road, I would say probably a BMW S1000 single R, the naked bike version. That's probably a solid one, but you're still going to have the wind issue, but you're going to have a lot more road stability on that one, I would say.
Yeah, this is an interesting looking one, but I still would have to go with the old tried and true, the Halcyon 450, which I just remembered isn't on that tab. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and make it reality day in and day out. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Alex Street, who has a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Alex, for that $50 support as well and supporting the channel. He said, I'm always on the hunt for good history books for my father and was hoping you could, every once in a while, mention a good book that you've read. The box is already in the mail, and love the work and keep it up.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words, Alex Street. And also, I got to say, great to hear that you got that book. That is actually a really interesting book. Matthew, have you read it yet?
No, I've definitely not read it.
Eventually he'll read it, folks. Eventually he'll read it. But there are a lot of good books. Let me 1 second, folks. I'm actually going to see if I got any good books to recommend you. So, let's see here. Let's see. Any good ones? Hold up. What do you see here? I got to try and find it. I don't know if y'all can hear me right now. So, another good one, another great one that I have right here is a book written by Barbara Fries called Coal, A Human History. It's a really interesting book on the history of coal. And coal, much like the shipping container, doesn't really sound like it would be a wildly interesting thing. But it's not really about the rock, the black rock called coal. It's really more so about how coal shaped human history. And its development, which is a really interesting part of society, because even still to this day, a large part of our industry and a large part of our electrical grid relies entirely on coal. And so it's a really interesting thing to read about. This book was written back in 2007. Actually, really quickly, it was written in 2003 in the United Kingdom. It's a very, very interesting book, really information heavy, but it also has a part at the end that talks about the kind of impact that coal has and burning coal on the environment, which generally I don't get books to read about political statements. Like I would have to agree that coal is actually pretty nasty for the environment. There's a lot of byproducts that are burned off when you burn coal. They're actually pretty bad. There's actually trace amounts of uranium in every bit of coal. So when you burn coal, you're quite literally emitting radioactive particulates into the air, along with sulfur dioxide and a couple of other nastier things. Actually, I believe it's sulfur oxide and a couple of other things. So it's a little bit of a nasty thing to burn, but still a very important and integral part of our modern age still to this day. So it's a bit of a necessary evil to a sense. Also, let me see here. Another interesting book to read, I think this would be up your alley, is, let's see here. The Way of the Ship. I actually just saw that one. The Way of the Ship is another good book as well. And it generally talks about how maritime shipping has evolved and developed from about the beginning of the colonial era up until the present day, and explains all of the developments, changes, and technological innovations that started to make global shipping a lot different and usually a lot easier, which is also a really interesting kind of a book to read too. Generally, I read a lot of books about how transportation and industry works, because learning about that is a very important way of learning how our post-industrial and industrialized world works, which is such a massive and important part of our daily lives. A lot of people don't really realize that, but there's a massive moving machine, which is made up of all of us each and every day, that makes the United States of America what it is, and results in our output each and every single day. And so reading about it and learning about it is a very interesting kind of a thing to do, because once you learn about it, you kind of have a little bit more of a realistic grounding on how America works and how to kind of alter its components for the maximum amount of efficiency, which is something that a lot of people really don't understand. And sometimes you also learn that the march of progress might need to be slowed, or at least changed in a way to make sure that it's not trampling people and ruining their quality of life in the workforce, which is also a pretty important thing too. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Very good question, by the way. I thank you for asking that, because there are a lot of cool books to read out there, and I got to thank you massively, Alex Street, for hunting for those books for your father, so that way he can read some good ones. And of course, we will make sure to keep this thing up and keep it rolling, but I hope that those book recommendations are some pretty good ones to start off on. There are a load of them, but also I don't want to bore you with like railroad books, because most of my books are about railroads. Like for example, the entire thing that I know about the LNN came from a book. It was actually crazy. It was like the only railroad that wrote their own history book, but the LNN wrote their own history book, and they actually put in some of the bad parts as well. But anyways, they talked about the entire history of the railroad, and it was a very interesting thing to learn from, and really read about their historical development from 1850 up till I believe it was 1963 when the book concluded. So pretty neat. But beyond that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. Also, by the way, if you do want to read that book about the history of the L and N, it is written by, let me go see. It's a pretty common book. When you type it in, it's pretty easy to find it, at least from what I remember. Oh, geez, where is it? Where is it? I'll know the cover when I see it. Let's see here. Dang, where in the world is it? Let me type in his last name. I believe it's like, Hare something. Here we go. It is by Kincaid A. Hare, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. That's just the name of the book. It's just literally the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. But it's about 800 pages long. And then a lot of people are like, man, this guy, he's on the spectrum. And yeah, I probably am. But it's 800 pages long, and the whole thing is about the history of the railroad from when it was created and chartered in 1850 to the conclusion of the book when it was written in 1963, the year that Kennedy got shot. And it was actually written before Kennedy got shot, so it didn't really make, like, they wouldn't have made it into the book anyways, but it was just before he got shot that the book was published. So a little bit of an interesting kind of a factoid to tell you what time in history that book concluded. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Huge thanks to you once again, Alex Street, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Raven Patah, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Raven, for also the $50 support. And they said, Enforcers, thanks for your work. And thank you for the kind words. And they said, don't want to be a history nerd, but however, what do you guys think of Ukrainian wedges, historically speaking?
Let's see. Ukrainian, one second. I'm going to have to type that in, actually. Ukrainian wedges. Let's see here. Yellow Ukraine. There's been a lot of different Ukraines. I can't find anything on Ukrainian. Let's see. What's significant? Oh, okay. Okay, now I'm getting it. Okay, so apparently the Ukrainian wedges were inside of Russia, and pretty much during the Russian Civil War, they broke away and they created their own independent countries that were called Yellow Ukraine, Green Ukraine, so on and so forth. I actually do not know a lot about that. Actually, I'll be honest with you, the Russian Civil War, beyond it being a battle between the Bolsheviks and the imperialists, I really could not tell you a lot more about it beyond there was a foreign intervention that did occur, and the United States did occupy Vladivostok for, I believe, about a year, and then we left. And there was about 50,000 U.S. troops inside of Russia during that period of the Civil War. There's also a large number of British troops and other troops in other major areas throughout the Russian Empire at the time. So unfortunately, I couldn't tell you a lot about those. That's actually a really interesting question, and is actually beyond my historical knowledge, actually. So I'd largely have to declare ignorance on that. But that is really cool that you do know about that. And I wish that I knew enough about it to actually tell you a little bit more about it. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, keep it running, and learn that there is such a thing as the Ukrainian wedges, which I didn't even know existed at all, actually. So with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so this one goes to D.E. Bowen, who puts in a $20 donation, along with John Combest, who also put in a $20 as well. And thank you very much, D.E. Bowen and John, for the each $20 support, and we do appreciate it very much. I do not see comments attached. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you to both of y'all for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Y'all didn't throw in comments, but we are massively appreciative of y'all's support, because it helps this channel to keep on rolling day in and day out. And so a huge thanks to both of y'all so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Howard Mendelson, who puts in a 20 also. And huge shout to Howard for that $20 support as well. And Howard said, a lot of new people here with strong opinions on India and Pakistan.
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Ron, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I'd have to agree, there is a lot of strong opinions that I've seen, even from old guards with differing opinions on the India-Pakistan situation. I'm largely remaining neutral on this one, considering that America said that they didn't have a dog in the fight. While technically there is an argument to say that we do and we should support India, I'm just going to go with the official Department of State statements and just keep no dog in the fight as far as the channel is concerned in the LSA. So it's open to conjecture, but there have been a lot of strong opinions on who would be the best off in that war and who would win. And of course, it may still be ongoing at this point, or it might not be, or we're really going to have to wait for the next day to see what's going to be happening as a result. But still, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that quite well indeed. But I would have to agree with you. Strong opinions on that one for sure. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 super chat from DS. And DS put in that 20. And thank you very much, DS, as well, for the support. He said, keep up the good work. And also, happy birthday to Matt. And also, by the way, thank you for the happy birthday, even though it's not my birthday, even though every single day feels like my birthday these days, somewhat, kind of, a little bit. Thank you very much for the kind words. And Enforcer, what say you?
Every day is a party for us behind the scenes. It's just that it's one of those parties where people get in fights and are making drama for no reason. It's just crazy. Why can't it stop? But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support. By the way, that's not happening in between Matthew and me. This is an external thing. And it's just getting tiresome now. It keeps going. It's like a perpetual motion machine, Matthew. It keeps itself running, even when there's nothing really going on. But beyond
that, like that drinking bird, as long as it keeps its beak in that blue water, it just keeps on drinking.
And the blue water is just existing, apparently. So that's a fun one. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much for the support. And a big congratulations to Matthew. His birthday has not come yet. It will be coming later in the year, though. And I do thank you so much for the kind words and support, because folks like you help us to make this channel possible and keep it running. And I got to thank you massively for that, because if it wasn't for folks like you, where will we be? Well, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. That is for sure, especially if other people had something to do with it. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to another channel legend. It is Chef Danny B, coming in with a $40 support. And thank you very much, Danny, for the very generous support, and also being here once again tonight. He said, good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here. I always love the stream. I love the emergency streams, but the bad part of it is I don't get to watch. I only get to listen to regular streams, and I listen to the first half, and I watch the rest.
Hey, and I gotta think of him, it is Chef Daddy, and I gotta say, thank you for enjoying all of the streams. I hate to hear that you can't watch the emergency streams. A lot of people actually apparently don't get notified that the emergency streams are running, because I think it was every single time that we ran an emergency stream, BC Skyman would come in at the normal time. He's like, what? It's already been running. And I was like, damn it. I was like, they didn't put out the notifications to people, which is annoying. We cannot stand when that happens. It's happening a decent bit these days. But one thing I can say, though, is that I'm glad to hear that you are getting to watch them. And and I gotta say, it's great to have you here tonight, Chef Danny. We always love to have the chef here. We could always use some good food, some good eats, I tell you, because we have like no time to cook. And it's a sad thing. It's a real sad reality of it, because we end up having to go and eat out pretty much all the time these days because nobody's got time to cook. I don't have time to cook. Matthew doesn't have time to cook. Nobody cooks. Nobody cooks. It's a sad thing. A real sad thing. We had to cancel HelloFresh for that reason. It's a damn terrible shame. But beyond that, I do think of his support, Danny B, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to have an official chef of the LSA, and we wouldn't be able to be here tonight and getting to run this stream and cover all this news. And also, take our minds off of things. Take our minds off of things, because you know, folks, it just never ends. It never ends. And it's just, oh man, I wish, like, I'll be honest with you, folks. It's a really kind of a personal thing that's going on in the background. It's been happening honestly for months on end at this point. And I wish that we could tell you all about it, but that would get into the too much information kind of a realm. So, you know, that's why I just sit there and allude to something and we don't talk about it at all on air. But just to explain to y'all what that is about, it's a little bit of a behind the scenes kind of a thing that we wouldn't want to bring up on air. We wouldn't want to sully our news reporting or a channel or anything with it. But it is something that just will never end. And I just got to be honest with y'all, folks. I am absolutely out of energy for it. It wears me out hearing about the dumb stuff. And like today, I was just told that it's starting up again, and I was like, I don't even know why. You know, we're just over here doing our thing, working, and then for some reason problems have to be made. It's kind of like the modus operandum of that whole deal is that if there is no problem, there has to be a hurry up to make a problem out of nothing. So we're having to deal with that again. That'll be fun and enjoyable, I'm sure of it, and we'll have many hours of stress behind the scenes that have nothing to do with work or our own lives, because someone else wants to be the center of the world for some reason. So we'll be having to get to that. So anyways, I do thank you for support, Chef Danny. I'm sorry that I went on that rant right there, but that just, you know, we've been dealing with this since, October of last year. It kind of is the reason why we're in Enforcer HQ 2.0, and it just has no end in sight. So it's just it's tiresome, I'll say that. But still, huge thanks to you once again, Danny B. Hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to SC Dear Girl, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, South Carolina Dear Girl, for that $20 support. And they said, you were all my go-to. I truly depend on you. An old military retiree here.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and thank you for saying that this is the channel you come to hit the news. I gotta thank you. I gotta thank you greatly. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And I gotta say, it's wonderful to know that a lot of the people here who are watching are parts, either parts or retired armed forces. It's really neat. I think about a third of the audience these days is retired or currently serving armed forces from around the world. And it's a really neat thing to know that we were able to give you all a lot of the news of what's going on out there each and every single day. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. Hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are going to be moving on to the next one. But a huge thank you to you once again for the kind words. And also, no, it's not Hot Dog Man, folks. Hot Dog Man is something we'd be very open and transparent about. And also, no, it is not a girl either. It is not either of those things. Just want to make sure to knock those out. It is some more close kind of a thing, you know. They say that blood is thicker than water, but in my experience, water is probably thicker than blood in this kind of instance. If y'all kind of get where I'm shooting at there, or getting at more so, better phrase of saying with that sort of a thing. And you know, we just have to keep dealing with that. I don't want to. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Old Warrior, another channel legend who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Old Warrior, for that support. And they said, Putin turned Kadyrov down, and what option might he be seeking? And also, did he do that, by the way? I didn't actually hear that. Must have gotten mixed up with the India news. But did he actually turn Kadyrov down?
I actually, unfortunately, I did not hear about it either. I would have to unfortunately declare ignorance on that one. I haven't heard any news on that. That's not to say it didn't happen. It's just to say that we haven't heard about it because we've been pretty much with a giant magnifying lens on Pakistan and India. So we've just been having to focus on that entirely. And sadly, if that did happen, I completely missed it at this point. If that did happen, we're going to look into it and try and research it. But unfortunately, right now, I wouldn't be able to give you an answer on that at the moment because we have completely missed it, apparently, if it did happen. happen. But still, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel keep running. It appears that many people are actually saying that Putin said no to Kadyrov resigning. He's forced to be the president of technically an autonomous republic, so a semi-autonomous republic. That is whack, man. Like, they can't say in Russia that there's actually, like, a freedom of the government. Because it's like, if you can tell someone that they're forced to remain in their position, that is not a freedom of government at all.
Yeah, it's really not, honestly. It's really a total farce.
Yeah, you know, it's like the guy's now stuck in a gilded cage at this point because he can't leave that presidential palace. He can't, quit. And I've heard that Kadyrov's been having serious health issues, like insanely serious health issues. So that is a very wild thing to hear right there. That apparently that was refused, and a lot of people are actually saying it did happen. So I'll have to look into that a little bit more. Sorry, everyone, that we missed that. Usually we're on top of the news everywhere. That one apparently slipped right through the radar. But still, big thanks to you once again for letting us know about that. And I will try and find out some more info on that so we can talk about that on stream a little bit more knowledgeably rather than just saying, wait a minute, that happened? So with that, thank you once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Aussie Dave, and Aussie puts in that 20, and thank you very much, Aussie, for that $20 support. He said, hello there. He said, do you like the Cube GT46 trains that run in NSW Australia? They also helped open the new freight terminal at Moorebank, Sydney, and LSA, mate.
And LSA, baby! And I gotta say, Australian railroads are not something that I have seen a lot, but this looks like a... Wait a minute. A GT... I'm seeing so many different versions of the GT46. Man, did they say GT46 in general or a specific variant of it?
They said the Cube GT46 train.
The Cube. So I'm guessing it's this one. And the answer to that is not really. I generally like the safety cabs that you see on, like, American locomotives like this one. This is actually an Australian train. I do not know what the hell those things are up there. This looks like an EMD SD70 Ace, and apparently it is. It's just one made for the Australian market. Wild looking one, I'll say that. But I'm generally not a fan of, like, the flat cab locomotives or engines out there. The only one that I actually like would be the Class 66, I believe, in the UK, which is this one right here called the Shed. This one I think is neat. But this one, I don't know. It doesn't really pull it off well, in my opinion. Now, there is something cool I did want to bring up, which is the Gevo locomotives, because I actually found out something crazy, Matthew. These things have gone international.
Those have?
Yeah, they've gone international. Apparently, there are loads of export customers that GE produces these for and then ships them out to. And one of them at a time was actually Russia. And I want to show you the Russian version of the Gevo. Let's see here. What the hell? What the? So, let's see here. Where in the world's the Russian ones? They had a Russian one. Let's see here. Egyptian, Pakistan, China Railways, CSX, Wabtec. Everyone loves Wabtec, which technically owns GE. But let's see. Where in the world is it? Come on. This isn't right. Let me go pull up a Russian Gevo because they look insane. They look stupid. Russian Gevo. Where the hell? So, either I was hearing misinformation, or this isn't, they just don't have any pictures of it. But I had heard somewhere that General Electric actually produced Gevo series locomotives for the Russians. It was like some cat body looking abomination of God. It was terrible looking. And I was like, what the hell? And I wanted to show that to y'all because I wanted to crap on it. But I can't find it. I cannot find it at all. So that's a little bit of a shame right there. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But generally, I used to not be a fan of American locomotives. I actually used to like British trains a lot more when I was in high school. But as I've grown up, American trains have grown on me. I like their rugged, style, the reliability. They're just really cool looking to me. Not to say that Australian and British trains aren't reliable. They're incredibly reliable. But I just like the rugged reliability look of American trains, like the GE series or the EMDs, and all of the other locomotives that have existed in the past from Alco, Baldwin, Fairbanks, Morse, and that whole gamut. And also EMC too, because EMC before they became EMD made some really cool stuff. But yeah, I like these. These are pretty neat. If I had to say a country's locomotives that I did like, I would go with the Swiss Crocodile locomotive. Forgot the name of the thing. I think it's this thing. Yeah, it's actually this thing. No, I don't think it's that one. I think it's a little bit different. It was a German. Wait, hang on. I think it's actually the German crocodile. Yeah, let me go put that in. The German crocodile. Now to find it. Yeah, the class E94. This thing. I find these really neat. They're articulated, so it's actually 3 different pieces in one locomotive. So when it moves across the track, the thing actually like bobs and weaves in 3 different pieces, which is just really whack. These things can only get up to 50 miles an hour, but they are torqued to hell because they're electric. So they can pull a massive stuff and do it pretty easily, at least for their size. So I find these things to be pretty neat. But yeah, that would be maybe my favorite foreign locomotive out there in the world right now would be the E94. Anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Joel Heyman, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Joel, as well, for that support. Excuse me, goodness. He said, Currency Wars, a book published in 2010. Jim Rickards predicted most of this. Understand debt and money, and you see everything. And cheers, guys. I appreciate all the hard work.
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, and thank you for recommending a book. I don't really read a lot of economics and finance books. I tried to read one on the the economy of South Korea. It was an interesting read, but it started getting a little tough after a while. But I will give that one a look because I'm always interested in a new book here and there. And Currency Wars sounds like it would be a pretty interesting one. Usually, Joel, I always read books on history, though, so I would probably read a book like The History of Finance, and then read, like, how the Romans started a mint, or at least some semi-official mints, and then how that evolved over time and how the banking system evolved. That's usually how I always like to learn about things, is starting at the beginning and then learning about its evolutions, because then, to me, for some reason, mentally, that makes a lot more like sense in my mind, rather than someone saying this is how it works. It's really saying this is how it started, this is how it grew, and then this is how it works today, because then you kind of get the whole reason why all these things exist and really what function they were supposed to serve initially, and then how that evolved over time. But that actually sounds like a really interesting book, and I will have to give that a little gander, Joel. And so I thank you so much for the support and recommending that book. I'll actually have to give that one a read. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Brian Rosenberger, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Brian, as well, for the support. He said, do you think the ceasefire was a legitimate deal, or was it one or both sides trying to claim the moral high road, and it seems like it was broken by both sides within minutes?
As far as which country? Is it Ukraine and Russia, or Pakistan and India?
I think he's talking about Ukraine and Russia. I mean, excuse me, Pakistan and India, I think.
If we're talking about Pakistan and India, I'd say that it was actually given a fair shot, at least for a couple of hours, because we haven't been able to confirm in video or picture evidence any hostilities conducted by the Indians in response even yet. So it appears that the Pakistanis were the ones that unilaterally violate the ceasefire, and the reasons for which we do not know. We do know, however, that both sides may have been getting incredibly scared of the other. Pakistan appeared that they were getting scared that India might be able to beat them conventionally, and that's why they were having the nuclear conference. And then the nuclear conference scared India because they thought, well, if we beat them conventionally, they're going to start nuking us, and that would be a pretty nasty thing. So it appears that both sides wanted the ceasefire, but then Pakistan for some reason broke it, and we really don't know what kind of a reason or purpose they had for breaking the ceasefire so far. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And I hope I was able to give a fairly competent answer, a competent answer, as best as I can. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible. We wouldn't be able to be here right now, and we wouldn't be able to make sure to keep this thing a reality for years and years and years on into the future. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that the absolute best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one. Also, by the way, someone said, did y'all feel the earthquake today? I did not feel the earthquake. I've only felt one earthquake in Alabama the entire time I've lived here, and that was about 5 or 6 years ago when I used to live in Wetumpka. And I felt it early in the morning, and it shook the bed a little bit, and I was like, what the hell is that? And it just went away. It was very light. It was an earthquake that happened in Tennessee. The epicenter was at. So, no, I didn't feel the one today, but unfortunately, did you?
I don't think I ever felt it. I slept quite soundly throughout most of the morning because we get to bed really late at night, so we get up in about the middle of the day most times, like around 12 or 11. So I didn't feel it personally. I don't think I was even up for that. Also, by the way, Matthew, I wanted to show you this because this was the train that was apparently a GEVO before we move on, and it was this one. Ugh.
That's tough there. That's like a corrugated barn.
Dude, this thing is terrible looking. This was what I heard was supposedly built off of a Jivo. It doesn't appear that it was. But these things are hideous. I hate them a lot. Honestly, I hate all of the Russian locomotives. Not because they're Russian, but because they all look stupid as hell. Look at that one. Like, that's terrible looking. This one is also pretty bad looking. I don't know. Also, I don't know what their obsession is with the car body thing instead of a road switcher. Like, the only road switcher they have is this. Let's see here. It's this M60. No, it's the CMH. This one right here. That's the only road switcher they have, and that one's still hideous. I don't know what it was with that. Because they have an obsession with like the worst design for a diesel imaginable. Because you can't fix an engine in one of these things easily. Did you know that, Matthew? Did you know that that's why they went away from like the car body style trains to the ones that we have now? Is because it's practically difficult, if not impossible, to really like work on or repair the engines in a car body style locomotive like this?
I actually did not know that. No.
Yeah, so let me go pull up like an ES44 because this is a great example. So here on this one, we can see that they have like the wide car body safety cab up here, but near the back, the locomotive slims up, and you can see that there's a load of engine panels down the side. Let me see if I can get a better picture of one of these. So yeah, you can see all the loads of engine panels here on the side. So with this, it's actually quite easy to repair these kinds of locomotives because all you do is you pop open these side hatches, and the side hatches are aligned to where they line up with the cylinders in the engine. And with how engines are made for these locomotives, you can actually pop out the entire cylinder assembly and pop in a new one. Well, pretty easy, like it only takes a couple of hours. With these, however, instead of just popping, like with these, instead of just popping the cylinder right outside a locomotive, then popping them right back in with a special crane, instead you have to take the entire cylinder assembly apart piece by hand, from inside the locomotive without a crane, so you have to manually pull everything out of the engine, and then you have to bring everything back in and then manually reassemble it piece by hand inside the locomotive, meaning that the repair times and turnover times for maintenance is insanely higher on a car body unit than it is on a road switcher style unit like these. So I don't know why the Russians obsess with having these, because it's like maintenance wise, these things are far more expensive to maintain and are down for a lot longer turnaround wise being repaired for that reason.
Huh, that's weird. That sounds like a bad design just overall.
Yeah, it's a terrible design idea. Like, it's literally like, like, it's like saying, oh, let's have our car engine, put under the floorboards, where you have to, like, take the whole entire chassis off to get to the engine. That's pretty much what you have to do with one of these. Or you have to say, let's have the engine under the floorboards, but we really can't get to it, so there's a little tiny panel in the floorboard that you pop open, and then you gotta stick your hand down in there and try and work on the engine. That's pretty much how complicated it is to work on one of these.
That's tough.
Man, it is tough, man. It's tough as hell. And that's why American locomotives are just that good, because they are the road switcher style. And also you can operate them backwards and forwards and have kind of relatively the same amount of visibility, at least in theory. But anyways, with that, I hope that has addressed it the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And we have a second super chat, this time from Raven Patah, who put in another $50 donation. And thank you very much, Raven, for that second support. And they said, thank you for being pro-American, pro-Western news nerds. Love you guys. And yeah, Yamaha V-Star is a very good bike. Also, I think I've seen the V-Star. I think that's that one that rapidly accelerates like insanely fast, I think. No, that's the wrong one. I think I'm thinking of the V-Max. I think the V-Star is the Cruiser, which we're looking at right here. So that's pretty good. I actually had a buddy that used to ride that. I used to ride around with Tomka with a fellow that went to my high school that had one of those. And actually was faster than my sport bike. Actually, I think he had more balls than I did to go around corners. I was trying to save my life, so I didn't want to do it quite that extreme. But yeah, I knew a dude that rode a Cruiser like that, like a maniac, and could outrun a sport bike. But very cool. It's a pretty cool looking bike. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, that is actually a really cool looking motorcycle right there. I've never seen this thing before, but now I'm interested. Now I'm interested in it. And I got to thank you so much for the support. I got to thank you for appreciating that we're pro-American, pro-Western news nerds. I mean, we're nerds to the extreme. Honestly, Matthew is a semi-nerd. I'm a full nerd, unapologetically. I'm just, I'm a nerd, like who the hell knows shit about like car body and road switcher style bodies on locomotives? Not really many people. And then also talks about war and things. That's just being a nerd for the hell of it. But Matthew, he's into cool things. He's not into nerd things. He's into motorcycles. He's into cars. He's into the non-nerd things. I'm into the nerd things. But I'd have to say that Don't disrespect Matthew like that. Only disrespect me. I'm just playing, by the way. But I do thank you for the support. And I got to say, nice motorcycle right here. I do like it. It looks good. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And thank you so much, Raven Patah, for enjoying this channel and supporting it massively and helping us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Danny B, who puts in a $40 donation. And thank you very much, Danny, for that $40. The second donation of the night, by the way. And huge shout out to you, Danny, for that support. He said, Chef Danny again. And I have my roommate, Andrea, and her boyfriend, my cousin, Mickey, listening. And also, I did my catering on Monday. And I did sausage ricotta lasagna and chicken parmesan with pasta and clams linguine. And I sold out. Honestly, I would have bought some of that happily. Like, I would have happily bought some of that. If I could have bought like 3 or 4 for later, I'd have probably bought those too. But thank you very much for the support, Danny. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say that I'm hungry right now, Danny B. You're not helping. Like that sounds so good. Let's go pull up a sausage ricotta. Let's see, ricotta. Let's see here. What else was it? It was a sausage ricotta lasagna. We love lasagna. So here we go. Let's take a look at this. Oh, that'd be so good right now, dude. A lasagna. Goodness, man. That'd be great.
Oh man, that would be good, honestly. Like anything that's homemade at this point, I would have to like buy a few.
I would krill for some homemade food, really. It would be we haven't had homemade food in a while. We haven't really had time to cook or anything. We only have time to go out and get something to eat. And it's a damn shame, I tell you. It's a damn shame, Danny B, because I would have absolutely devoured a sausage ricotta lasagna and lasagna, and also a chicken parmesan with pasta and clams linguine. Oh man, that's just too good sounding. I mean, I wish I could have that right now. And sadly, after the stream is over, we're gonna have to decide on Taco Bell or Whataburger or something else. So with that, hope that does address that well. I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Clausen, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Clausen, as well for that $10 support. They said Matt and Andrew are phenomenal analysis. And also, thank you, Clausen. That's very high praise right there. And they said, my trust in them goes beyond words, and they are true integrity looks like.
Dang, that's really high words right there. I got to thank you for that.
Thank you.
That's really high praise, and I got to thank you so much for that, because kind words do mean a lot. We don't say that just to, like say like a corporate thing, like your feedback and positive feedback means a lot to the corporation. We don't say it like that at all. It really does mean a lot, because like I'm kind of hinting at here, appreciation for what we do has never really been anything that's been forthcoming. The only time that when we were growing up that there was ever any appreciation was when we were in the middle of pretty much being told off, and then there would be a little appreciation thrown in to make it less bad. It would be like, you suck as a kid, blah 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 blah. By the way, you did do this, which is all right, but blah blah blah, yada yada. So when we grew up, we never got really that much praise over anything. And if it was a standalone, really for a whole other reason rather than just saying it for the hell of it. So kind words really do mean a lot to us. Just to try and explain it a little bit better. It really does mean a lot to us because we have never really gotten that a lot in our lives. So when we hear people actually saying that we're doing a legitimately good job, it actually does mean a great deal to us, more than it would mean to most other people who maybe were told that a lot growing up. We weren't. So with that, I got to thank you massively once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, let's see here. Kim Bennett said, hello there, Enforcer Matt. How many peeps are in y'all's crew? Just you two? Producers, sound, and vid? Just curious. That's a question that we get quite a bit these days. A lot of people are curious. It's actually just always been us two. Originally, it was just the Enforcer, but just a month in, I joined as the co-host. And from there, it's just been us two. We've never had a third person that's ever had like control over anything that actually runs anything substantive. It's at one point, Enforcer had people running like an official Enforcer Discord, but they weren't really like real co-hosts or employees or anything like that. They were just dedicating some time to it. But unfortunately, they dedicated some bad time as it ended up going south. But anyways, no, it's just us two. Like everything on the channel, the editing, sound production, any of the graphic design, thumbnails, all the descriptions, titles, everything, any copy, the merch store, all the merch designs, Patreon, anything you can think of, it was either done by me or it was done by the Enforcer or both. So yeah, it's just us. We do literally everything. We wear a
Like,
ton of hats.
the
That's why we
intro,
stay so busy.
the orchestra, like the Morse code message, everything is done by one of us. Like anything here on the channel, it started with one of us, and either ended up with both of us working on it, or it was an entire solo project from just one of us or the other. So it's a very laborious thing for that reason, because everything y'all ever see on this channel, it was from the work from Matthew or me. There's no other third or fourth people in the background, and we don't have a staff. And generally, the honest truth is that we try to include a third person. We wouldn't really be able to, we wouldn't be able to afford to give all three of us affordable living wages. Like, that actually be the reality of it. So that's why we really don't have three people, because no matter how hard we work, we still really just don't have enough reserve capital to bring on a third or fourth person to make it easier. So we really just have to like slug it out with this thing, and just hope that, support's good and that we make sure to keep things running. So with that, hope that does address that well. Great question, by the way, because that is one of the most commonly asked questions, but a lot of people usually believe that we have an entire staff behind us supporting us, but it's just the two of us here on air. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one is going to go to none other than, this one goes to, and I've got to double check here, make sure the spreadsheet is up to date, and this one goes to DMO Last, who puts in that 10, and thank you very much, DMO, for the support. They said, what do you think of World War III after India and Pakistan joining the dance floor, and are they still on a position where they can de-escalate and move on?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I think I don't really know where it's going, honestly, in India and Pakistan, because we haven't heard of any outbreaks of violence now since the Pakistani attack 4 hours after the ceasefire. So that may possibly end up being a standalone, or it may not end up being the continuation of the conflict. We're not really sure at this point, but I would have to say that they're pretty much in their own world doing their own thing. In my opinion, I don't really think it's going to be affecting much outside of India and Pakistan, and I don't really think China's going to be getting that heavily involved, because over the days that this was going on, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs never even really made an official statement saying that they were going to get involved, or even anything close to it. They only said that beforehand, and then once it actually broke out, they largely went silent. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and I think it wants to give us support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Christian Menard, who puts an A10, and thank you very much, Christian, as well, for that support. He said, do you think this could be a plot by the CCP to test their weapon system capabilities in a real war situation, and do you think that China could have possibly instigated this war between Pakistan and India to battle test their equipment?
I thank you for the support. I would say most likely not. It's just a bit of luck that the Chinese have supported Pakistan with a lot of weaponry and equipment to see how it performs. But I don't think the Chinese would orchestrate an entire conflict that could go nuclear just to see how their military equipment performs. That I would largely say probably hasn't happened. But no one can really be certain these days. But I'd say it's more likely than not that that is not the case. And this was more so about the ongoing border dispute between Pakistan and India on who actually runs Jammu and Kashmir. Is it Pakistan or India? And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to none other than Butchie777, a longtime channel legend from the UK. And thank you very much, Butchie, for that $10 support. And we do appreciate it very much. And also for being a longtime channel legend who's been here for a long time. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for the support, Butchie777, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you who are old guards and channel legends, we would have never had a crowd of people to speak to in the first place, and individual people to become friends with like you. And I got to thank you massively for the support once again and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this thing a reality and keep it running. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to JR Does Stuff, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, JR, for the $10 support. He said, guys, can you take my question from earlier, please? And also a quick rabbit hole for the Enforcer, and look up Travel Town in Griffith Park, California.
Now let's take a look at Travel Town while Matthew finds that question from earlier. Oh, look at this. What is this right here? East Valley Model Railroad, and then there also is a railroad here. What is this, I wonder? Wonder who won. So there's like a railroad. Where is this? This is just in Los Angeles. So what is this here? What is this? Are these standard gauge? And do they run? Oh, that's a nice one. That is certainly not in running condition, though. And that one's not running. Oh, cool. A Southern Pacific 060 switcher. That is really cool. Let's see here. And it appears that we have a tank engine, possibly a switcher, or a logging locomotive, maybe because there's a Shea or a Heisler behind that. Or a Climax, which was also the other name. That is actually pretty cool. I know that they have like a big railroad museum, apparently in Sacramento somewhere. That is really, really nice. Let me go see if I can take a look at that one, because this one is really cool. The California State Railroad Museum, right here. This one is really cool because they actually have exhibits that are well maintained, showing some of the key locomotives of the state of California's history, including this wonky looking thing, which I think is a 424, which is bizarre. They also have an F unit in the Santa Fe War Bonnet livery, which is just the cleanest. Who the hell can disagree? But it's a really impressive railroad. I actually think this is one of the Santa Fe kitchen cars for like the El Capitan or the let's see, the El Capitan and also the Southwest Chief, or the Super Chief, actually. Sorry, that's the actual name of it. But pretty cool. Like, I really like railroad museums. I wish I could go to one. But we have one. We have one in Alabama. Y'all want to see it, folks? Y'all want to see what our railroad museum in Alabama looks like? Because, buddy, it's something. Oh God, dude, everything is rotting out here.
This poor place right here had better days. I remember it used to look a lot nicer than this.
Actually, man, this is from 2016. This is actually when it looked like slightly better. But everything out here is practically rotted at this point. Maybe if I go on the other street, maybe I can see it a little bit better from there, maybe. No, the other street's way far away, sadly. Dang, I wonder, not a diss on the museum, it's just that the state of Alabama gives them no money. That's what it's currently looking like today. So y'all saw what this locomotive looked like in 2016. And this thing is practically rusted over for the most part now in 2024. Because I went through there a little while ago. I was like, damn, that's looking terrible. And it's looking pretty bad. They're giving them no money. No money at all. So they're really not able to maintain most of everything. Let's see here. Any other good pictures? Oh yeah, look at that. I mean, just an absolute shame how much of this stuff is just sitting here rotting away pretty much in the open sun. The state couldn't even give them enough money to give everything like a covered shelter. So most of the stuff's just rotting away entirely. Also, another thing, man, I just saw, look, they have a Frisco rail car.
Pretty cool. It's like a passenger one.
Yeah, it is a passenger rail car. This is a pretty neat one. But let's see. Anything else cool to show y'all? Not really. Except for that poor derelict caboose. It's bad. So that's all we have. That's all we have here in Alabama for a railroad museum. But a lot of other states have really cool ones and nice museums in general, which is something that Alabama is missing on a great deal. But with that,
Also, I do have the question that Jared Stuff wanted us to ask. He said Pakistan stores their nukes completely disassembled, or used to, and what is the process for them bringing them out of storage, reassembling them, and getting them ready to use?
I wouldn't actually know on that kind of a level because all I know is, at least in an in-depth scenario, is Russian and American nuclear doctrines where we keep our nuclear weapons technically at a constant state of readiness. So they are always ready to use and rarely ever disassembled unless if it's for maintenance and upkeep. So I wouldn't actually know how that would work with Pakistan because I would suppose that would take some time for them to get the nukes ready. So with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can, at least with the knowledge I would have, which is very limited on nuclear doctrines of countries that are not Britain, France, Russia, or the United States. So pretty much everyone who isn't in Europe or has anything to do with Europe, I really don't know a lot about their nuclear doctrine, unfortunately. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, JR said that could that be the reason why the U.S. freaked out? They detected them getting them ready. That could have been because they, like we said before, they assembled that top nuclear body in Pakistan, and when they did that, if that is the reason they're getting them ready, that would be a huge cause for concern. So that could have been the secret intel or the big alert. But anyways, jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Right Saloom, who puts in an 8, and thank you very much, Right, for the support. They said, "I love your news. 6 days a week of 6 days of week of Russia is stalling as usual, and they have pretty much never followed through with their word. And love Ukraine, coffee made of snow."
And thank you for the coffee made of snow. And Russia never follows through with anything on peace. They're just kidding everyone, yanking their chain and dragging everything on. And I think that we ought to wise up to that. I think we ought to wise up to that about a month or two ago at a minimum. But now we're just continuing on to try and continue on, I guess. I don't know. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. So massive thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Uncovered Cube 7, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Uncovered Cube, for that support. He said 31,500 steps today, a personal best. Man, damn, 31,000 steps. Where you at? Damn, that's a lot of walking. But as always, LSA.
And that's a damn record right there. Like, I don't know how many steps. I don't know why I had how many steps. What's going on, Jack? But I do thank you so much for the support. And I gotta say, your feet are probably crunching now. Like that, like you've worn them out that badly. Get some rest. Get off your feet. Like, gee, 31,000 steps. That is insane. How many steps do people get in a mile? How many steps in a mile? About 2,000 steps. Holy smokes. So you like walked like 16 miles or something today. That's quite a lot. That's quite a lot indeed. But I do thank you for the support. Make sure to rest those feet a little bit. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next super chat here. Let me get the spreadsheet reorganized just a little bit. This one goes to Steve, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Steve, for that support. He said, we're going to get World War III before we get Grand Theft Auto 6. And I think you might be right. I think you might be right. I saw the trailer, the second trailer for Grand Theft Auto 6. It looks like the graphics are going to be insane. And my hunch is, this is just a hunch. I'm not a huge like gaming news person, so I might be wrong on this. They might be waiting for a new Xbox console to be released because the new Grand Theft Auto 6 game looks like it's so graphic intensive that it might need a higher powered system to run it. But I don't know that for a fact. That is just my guess. But for the reason to delay it another whole year until like May of 2026, surely they're not delayed that bad with like the production of the game itself. It seems like it might be maybe something else with maybe hardware. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my opinion, I'd have to agree with you. I think we're going to be getting World War III before GTA 6, and that's a damn shame. Like that's a terrible thing. But I do thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And also, I gotta skip forward really quickly because the Dane company threw in a 2 and said the Russian, actually apparently it's Ukrainian, GET 333A 9999 is the only G vote that I could find, and I found it. I found pictures of it. And I had to show this one to you, Matthew, because this is ugly. Like, it might be Ukrainian. Actually, it appears that it actually is in Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. This is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. You want to see it? You want to see this thing?
Let's see it.
Oh. Oh my God, this thing is ugly. Look at that.
Oh, man.
This is terrible.
That is bad.
So you can literally see, like, sitting underneath, man, is like the normal kind of American locomotives that we would see. And then on top, they built this abomination of a body. And they made it a car body. Why? They've already proven that they can make it a non-car body with a road, like, kind of like a road switcher kind of a cab. And they're like, no, we want a car body with rear view mirrors. For why? That's just stupid. Like, that is honestly dumb. I don't understand the mindset behind Eastern Europeans and locomotives. They're stupid looking, and they're car bodies, which make no sense on a maintenance side, and also no sense from an operator standpoint either. Like, these things are just dumb. Oh my God, that just is stupid. Dude, it looks like a giant fridge, honestly, man. It looks like one of those smart fridges you buy at Lowe's, you know?
It kind of does. Like, it could be like maybe, you know, like a Frigidaire or something like that. Oh, it is a GE, so it is an appliance.
Yeah, it is built by the same people who make the fridges. It's like, oh, dude, it's just, dude, this is terrible. Really, I can't even get that out enough. I think this thing is hideous. I don't even care if it's Ukrainian. This is the ugliest thing I've seen so far on the rails that's new. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And I honestly think that, I honestly would have to say, folks, that I am all for trade with foreign countries because it brings money to America. But I would implore the President of the United States to put a 9,000% tariff on GE exports in the locomotive industry, because that is an abomination to God right there. I think that is a terrible one right there. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Darth Egregious, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Darth Egregious, for that $5 support and helping to keep the channel running. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Darth Egregious, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing running and make it possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $5 super chat from Right Geek Project. And thank you very much, Right Geek, for that support.
He's
this is
geeking.
Indian. No, what?
He's geeking.
Oh dear. They said Indian bomb pack underground nuke facility causing a 4.0 earthquake and radiation spike, and that was the intel that the U.S. allegedly received. Please check radar and timing.
I thank you for the support, but the U.S. didn't elaborate on it, so we really don't know what intel he received. It could have been a multitude of things, but I do thank you for the support, and I will try and look into that a little bit more. But if there was some sort of a massive radiological incident like that, that would be making world news right now because it wouldn't be something that could be easily hidden. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. I thank you once again for support and help this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ezekiel Gonzalez, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Ezekiel. What a support. He said, 1,000 a month. I got mine at 23, and it was 500 for the year. And who'd you go with? And honestly, I was shocked at the $1,000 a month. I knew it was going to be somewhat steep, but I won't say who I went with. I actually got 2 different quotes from 2 of the biggest insurance folks out there, and they were both about 1,000 a month. I think one was like 800 a month, and then the other one was 1,000. So it was both insane. Like that's insane. That's like high-end car payment money right there for just insurance on a motorcycle, which makes no sense because if the bike costs like $9,000 in total, you'll pay the bike off in 9 years just from the insurance alone. So that would make no sense. Or actually, you paid off in just 1 year. Actually, my math's off. You'd actually pay it off in 1 year. You'd pay off the whole cost of the bike, not 9 years. Quick math. Anyways, I suck at math, even though I got straight A's in college. Make it make sense. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I think, Matthew, you touched all the bases on that one pretty well. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Chicken Little, who puts in a 5. And said, I want to hear what I want to hear, and I'm hearing it. Good work, Enforcers, and thanks for keeping me updated.
And thank you, Chicken Little, for the support. I knew when that super chat came in, it was right after the other guy said, I want to hear the truth, which means I just want to hear Russia winning, because that's their truth. But I do thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. Keep it running. So a huge thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Barry Young, who puts in a 5. He said, I love the channel, and thank you for keeping everyone in the loop during these crazy times.
And we are thankful that you are here and being in the loop, because we always love to know that folks are actually here and enjoying it greatly. And I got to thank you for supporting it and chipping in just a little bit to help this thing to keep running day in and day out. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again. Hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Wait What, who puts in a 5 and says, Zelensky fighting for his people, fighting for his country.
And he is, I would have to say, he's doing it quite admirably compared to other world leaders in other instances. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope this channel keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And also, big shout out to Barry Young once again for throwing in another 5. And also, while we're at it, big shout out to Plazat for putting in a 3 and Jack Lloyd for putting in a 2. And thank you very much, Plazat, Jack. And also, while I try to get the spreadsheet to cooperate once again, Barry for that $5 support. And we do appreciate that very much. And we also had a 5 from Big Daddy J, who put in that 5. And thank you very much, Big Daddy J, for that support. They said, I've never asked, why is it not Enforcer Matt and Enforcer, insert name here, and the channel name is not the Enforcers? And what is Enforcer's first name? Also, by the way, it's called just the Enforcer because I was not here to begin with. I joined a month later, so that's why it's been the Enforcer, and it stayed the Enforcer. But Enforcer, what say you?
Thank you for the support. The reason why it is not the Enforcers is that this wasn't started off as a joint venture. It was started off as a singular thing. Actually, the name came around because the name was actually for a gaming channel, and my name on a certain video game was the Enforcer. So it just moved over directly into this the YouTube name after I changed the name from, I think it was called the Think Tank, to the Enforcer. Then there was never another name change. So that was my in-game name, was the Enforcer. So then when the war started, I never changed the name, and I never really changed the branding either, for the large part. But in some ways it was changed. But in the general like profile picture and everything like that, it wasn't really changed. But beyond that, the reason why I am the Enforcer is because I am the Enforcer, because I was the Enforcer that created the show for the large part, and I'm also the Enforcer on that game. So that's kind of why I'm the Enforcer, and then Enforcer Matt is Enforcer Matt, is because he joined on later, and then we're like, well, what kind of a stage name are you going to have? Because we just, it'd be kind of lame for me to be the Enforcer, and then you're just Matthew, so what do we call you? And then we were like, well, Enforcer Matt would make sense. So then he became,
A stage name. What do you think? I'm a stripper?
no, not like that, man. You know, like,
I'm
like
joking.
you know
It's
what
a
I mean?
joke.
Like,
Don't get no feels, man. It's just a joke.
but we gave him a stage name, which was the Enforcer Matt, so that way it wouldn't be like, you know, like the Annihilator and then Brad, you know, something like that going on every night. So that's why he was called Enforcer Matt. But my actual first name is Andrew. It's been mentioned a couple of times here and there throughout the shows. But what's funny is that while everyone in my personal life knows me as Andrew, a lot of them have ended up just calling me the Enforcer. I actually like, I don't really like that much. But usually there's like more than one Andrew that everyone knows. So then I end up being the Andrew that gets called the Enforcer, because everyone's like, oh, well, you know, he's just the Enforcer, so call him that. So, you know, I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm just the Enforcer now. I'm hardly even Andrew, even to the people I actually know, like out there in the world. But still, that's why it works. And also, the name was never changed to the Enforcers because we were scared that might mess up things in the algorithm a little bit. So it just remained the Enforcer. So with that, I hope that does address that well. I think it wants to give her support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Robin M, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Robin, as well. I said, appreciate you too, and enjoy and chat tonight. And peace.
Hey, and thank you so much for enjoying the stream tonight and supporting this channel and helping it keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Smoking Shaman, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Smoking Shaman, for that support. They said move the LSA HQ to Florida, where motorcycle insurance is not required, and go LSA. Honestly, though, I want motorcycle insurance. Like, I really do, because motorcycle theft, especially when you don't have a garage, is a serious deal. And if someone steals your bike and it's not insured, you're out 10 grand or whatever the bike costs, which is something I cannot afford. I cannot afford that. So I'm definitely getting insurance. So if I can't get insurance, then the motorcycle is simply out. As much as I want one, I just simply wouldn't be able to get it, which is unfortunate, because I was really fiending over a motorcycle, kind of like the hot dog man fiends for rock. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you for the support. And we'll put that under consideration. We'll put it under consideration and advisement. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Chaos Reigns All, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Chaos Reigns All, for that support. They said, dude, if you like trains, there are clubs of retired people that get to use the tracks to run convoys of their little maintenance cars on the tracks.
That's pretty cool. I thank you for the support and sharing that with me. I don't know if that would be up my alley, because I like to see the big rumble and the roar of the engines pass. And Matthew can say that it actually is really impressive when you're near them, because they are actually shaking the ground all around them, like the pebbles and everything are bouncing around. It's like that is cool. That is really neat that they have that kind of power behind them. But still, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that quite well indeed. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one goes to Kyle Padell, who puts in a 5 once more. And Kyle says, LSA, the trusted news. Enforcer Matt, Enforcer Andrew, you guys run a clean show. And thank you for that, Kyle. He said, look at Lake Thunderbird in Norman, Oklahoma, a.k.a. Dirty Bird.
Lake Thunderbird. Where's that? Where's that? That's the Great Salt Plain. The Great Thunderbird. Great Thunderbird Lake? Oh, look, it is right here. It's Lake Thunderbird. Look at that. It's a lake filled with thunderboids. That's pretty cool.
Birds of thunder.
Man, birds of justice. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And maybe one day we'll go check out this brownish Willy Wonka Chocolate River looking lake. I'm just kidding. It actually looked blue and everything else. But there, it sure as hell is looking brown. That's interesting.
Oh, yes, the Ganges.
Oh man, but there is no trash in this one. So with that, man, here in Broward County, the mountains are made of trash. But anyways, to that, I hope that does address that well. You're BLP kosher. We have to know. But anyways, we are on to the next one, and I think let's give us support and help this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. Also, John Shepard said insurance might be cheaper if you move Enforcer HQ 3.0. I imagine Birmingham has a lot of thefts. Yeah, I maybe so. I mean, we're not living in like the hood area of Birmingham or anything. We're living in the nice part of Birmingham, thankfully, because the hood area of Birmingham is very dangerous, like for crime and like violent crime. But I think just generally speaking, like with motorcycles being an open thing, unless you put like wheel locks on them or like some type of handlebar lock or something like that. Even with that, like people just come up with bolt cutters or something, they could chop that right off and they just roll a bike on a trailer and they're gone. Like it's easy to steal a bike, like extremely easy. The UK people in the UK know that. If you have a bike in London, those barely last for a minute because there's so many bike thieves running around. It's not quite like that here in the United States because people have guns here, and that doesn't really just happen all over the place. But at the same time, though, I wouldn't want to risk it. Like just sitting a bike out like in a parking lot area, that seems like I'd be honestly a nervous wreck about that not having insurance. To me personally.
And also another thing is that getting out of Birmingham, there's a lot of incentives to it, like getting away from certain things. Not to put it dead on the nail, but there's a lot of reasons why we're trying to get away from Birmingham. But there's honestly more so a real crux of the reason, which I've generally said that Birmingham's not a great place, and in some instances it certainly isn't. But there's really more of a driving reason to leaving Birmingham than it being a good place or a bad place. There's more so just a factor of we're trying to get away from a certain element. And the only way to get rid of that element is to move as far away as you can from it. So that's kind of like my motivating reason for getting the hell out of Birmingham. Because to be honest, the honest truth is that I have a decent amount of friends here. I've traveled around. There's a lot of stupid people in cities, but that's the city. But it's not a bad city, at least as long as you're on the good side and have a decent amount of friends. But beyond all that, there's a elephant in the room for the large part that continues to be a problem, and because they are in the area, you really have to have a choice of continuing to deal with that shit for the rest of your life or just moving away from it. And my answer is, and this isn't really like a fight or flight thing. My answer is to just get away from that and get on to living life without having to worry about that as a 24/7 focus of distraction. And annoyance, because it is, it's annoying, folks, when you have to deal with something that someone is just fabricating in their mind to create problems, and it's just an endless string of problems. Like, you sit there and you try and overlook it and try and forget it, and then somehow a problem is made out of that. I have no clue how that kind of stuff works. I really don't want to know how it works. All I know at this point is I'm done with it, and that's why I'm honestly trying to get out of here. Like, I'm not going to say exactly the details behind it, but I'm sick of it. It's just it. Like, I was worn out already 6 months ago, and the whole reason why I'm even bringing this up is because Matthew told me it's starting again today, and I'm just sick of it. It's like I don't want to deal with that my whole life. I didn't grow up, pretty much, like, the honest truth is, getting shit on my whole life to sit around and have someone shit on me for the rest of my life while I'm out here trying to do my thing. I want to get on and get to doing what I want to do without having someone around who's constantly doing that 24/7 and making life about them entirely. That's just old. It's really selfish, and it's really unappreciative, considering everything that's going on in between. That's just the whole honest to God truth as to why I want to get the hell out of Birmingham. Just being completely honest with y'all for once, instead of coming up with a million excuses under the sun that are kind of true but really don't apply. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And no, I want to answer this again. Does not have to do with girls. More so of a more bloodline kind of a thing, if we'll put it that way. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
If you're not careful, I'm going to bring out Conor McGregor on you. Listen, fella, this is not a therapy session. But anyways, we have one more super chat to get to. This one goes to Kyle Padell, who puts in a 5 and says, we should send Chris's mom to negotiate with Putin. I think that would be a great scare tactic.
I would have to say that would be scary. I honestly think I think he'd run away. I don't think we end the war. I think he'd just run away. He'd probably live in exile in China or North Korea at that point. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and it is now time to jump right into our live chat questions proper. That is all of our super chats for now, so we are now going to move on to our Morse code decoders on the stream. Tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, Dave Millsap, Turbo Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, Johnny Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said the Morse code today for today reads, Russia is getting scared that if the U.S. support increases, they would lose for sure. LLT LSA.
And that is the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. And I got to congratulate you massively, all of y'all, for getting that correct once again in the Least Spring Army Signal Corps, because you'll continue to get that correct time and time again, without fail, without end in sight. And it's truly an impressive thing. And the entirety of the Least Spring Army is in awe of the Signal Corps' deciphering abilities. And so a huge thanks to y'all so much once again. And considering time constraints tonight, we are going to be making sure to get on into our live chat questions, but unfortunately we'll only be able to grab a limited number of them. We will only be able to grab approximately 3 of them, and then we'll be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And that one is going to go to, let's see here, Tom Exman, who said, what if Russia actually stops during a ceasefire, but ends up rebuilding up their military?
That's an interesting question. Can you reread that one again, Matthew?
Yes, Tom said, what if Russia actually stops during a ceasefire, but rebuilds up their military?
I would be under the general assumption that both sides are going to try and build up their military during the ceasefire, but if the Russians are doing that, that's largely once again showing that it's a stall tactic, and it's being done in bad faith, at least in my opinion. So that would be my take on that, because if they're rebuilding their army, why are they doing that if this ceasefire is supposed to be a long-lasting and setting out the roadway to peace? That wouldn't make any sense. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. We are on to the second and last question of the night.
And this one goes to Penzrule, who says, is it goodness, excuse me for that. They said, is it true that the stealth bombers left Diego Garcia?
Yes,
I think based on the based on the information that we've seen, I think all of the B2s have left, based on what I've seen. But tell me if I'm right.
Yes, that is actually correct. All the B2s have left Diego Garcia, which is a little bit crazy because they actually were legitimately there just for the Houthis, which we actually thought they were being moved in for Iran because, why would we move high-value assets into striking range in the middle of the Pacific in a vulnerable area to hit a ragtag group of terrorists in western Yemen? Apparently, they actually were there just for that reason alone, and they weren't there for Iran. So that was actually pretty crazy, all things considered. But yes, they actually are returning back home to the States right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Gunfox, who said, is Hungary going to try and remake the Austro-Hungarian Empire once more?
Wouldn't that be crazy if they actually did try? I would say maybe. I honestly think they're just trying to recreate Hungary pre-Treaty of Trianon. Sort of thing. I think that's really what they're going for, but that's absolutely absurd because they would have to go to war with Romania, capture Slovakia, and also control a decent amount of Croatia, a small part of Bosnia, and a little bit of Serbia to make that possible. So I'd generally say no, but once again, it is Hungary we're talking about, and it is run by Viktor Orban, so he may have some sort of a delusion of grandeur, which for some reason these people always have. I don't know why. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. We've reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to say, a massive shout out and a thanks to all of y'all so much once again for watching. We had a peak viewership tonight of 10,000 people live, and so far 77,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. We are entirely honored and appreciative that each and every one of y'all has spent your time here on this channel tonight, and if you have enjoyed it, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe because we run these streams 6 days a week, every day but Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world. And so with that, a huge thanks to you all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow for the Sunday night fundraiser. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava, and long live the Leaf Spring Army, and the Leaf Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all once again for joining us on tonight, which is a very good day 1000 something. I just realized my whole banner just went away. I don't even have the day in front of me anymore, but y'all know what day it is. Say what?
1,172, man, on God below.
That's right. That's the day right there. Well, so sometimes we don't even know what day it is anymore, but I do know what day tomorrow is. It's the Sunday night fundraiser stream, so be sure to join us for that at 10 p.m. Eastern on our usual time at night. And also, if there is enough news to cover, we will have a short war video tomorrow midday for you all to watch. But with that, thank you all for joining us once again, and all 77,000 people that were here. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava. Thank you all, and good night.
Stand up, Army